Podcast number, 59, our second official live.
Amazing.
So, yeah, we got Dangerous Dave here again helping us with the
Dangerous
producing.
Dave.
Is that what it's going to be?
Huh?
Dangerous Dave?
I don't know. He's got a few
Double
little nicknames.
D.
Double D in the house.
I
Diamond Dave.
won't say the other ones.
Dangerous Dave.
Yeah,
Uh-oh.
so
I want to hear these all.
this is we'll say some of the other ones offline.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
This is
So
a Patreon account, guys. Want to hear Dave's nicknames?
well, today is our title shows. This is a pretty controversial topic. Dennis kind of got himself into some hot water. Some comments he made on the Exodus podcast, I think Dave Water put on, and so
JP.
we're gonna watch together this video that he has as kind of a response to that with the Pints of Aquinas podcast.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really good discussion on this topic. We've all watched it, and we're just going to run through that and pause along the way. You guys can join us in the comments on this topic because it's pretty interesting.
You want to kind of tell him what it's about?
Yeah, well,
Give him a
so-
brief.
He said, I had this written down. So on the Exodus podcast, he basically said that if porn is a substitute for one's wife, it's awful. If it's a substitute for adultery, it's not awful. And that kind of like got clipped, went kind of viral, and then so he's having to explain himself further, is what we see on this podcast. Which,
Oh, Dennis.
yeah.
So why is it? Because it's like, I can kind of see what he's saying, though, in all fairness.
like he's not wrong.
It's like,
objectively.
it's a lesser of two evils.
Yeah, he's not wrong objectively.
You
I would
know.
say. And it's a,
But
I-
it's
this-
definitely a can of worms.
yeah,
and
and
he
I think
got-
it's
Because most people are like, both are bad. You shouldn't do either.
Well, it sounds like on the surface making an excuse, kind of like a caveat, like, well, you know, if it's going to
It's-
save your marriage, you can watch your porn on the side, you know.
I
That's
see.
where people are, I think, interpreting it as.
Yeah, you know, he's gonna. Yeah, and I think this conversation, you'll see, is a bit of like pragmatism versus idealistic.
Mhm.
That's a good way to say it, yeah.
And because I would say like we're gonna tend to agree more with what's the guy's name that runs?
I don't even
It's not-
know.
You know
But
his
he's
name?
cool, and I like him. I've been watching a lot of his stuff lately.
The Eric or something. Anyway,
He's a very Catholic man.
he's Catholic, so he I would say is a little bit further conservative than we. Matt Frad.
Matt Frad.
Thanks, David.
That's a short, like, you know, it's like, you know how sometimes when you hear a name, like it's top heavy or bottom heavy, it's very bottom light.
Yeah, Frad.
Frad.
Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, I just wanted to let people understand.
But yeah, so anyway, I think you'll see a difference. You'll see this Judaism view versus the Catholic view in this topic, and a big dividing line on that is Judaism is very much in your actions. Your thoughts aren't what matter so much, and obviously Catholic and Christian, it's a lot different.
It's
So-
both.
They take
Yeah.
it a step further.
Both. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess we could get this rolling, Dave.
Dangerous
And
Dave.
we started in because they kind of set the intro like we did
awesome.
first.
So cool.
So he
They
starts
call him
off
Double D,
with
dude.
talking about the kind of the difference between Judaism and Christianity on this.
So what arose at one time, I had even forgotten about this. It was 5 minutes out of times an hour and a half, 24 hours. So it's 5 minutes out of 24 hours. And I don't even remember how the issue arose, but I mentioned that there is a Jewish-Christian difference with regard to Jesus' statement that a man who lusts after another woman has committed adultery with his heart. That that phrase does not appear, obviously, in the Hebrew Bible, but B, that the general Jewish view, and I say general because I can't speak for all Jews, even though I try to be normative, that you can only commit adultery with, and I said this in the video, and I purposely said I'm not trying at all to be cute
Right.
in any way. You can only commit adultery with one organ, and it is not the heart.
It's very
Judaism is very behavior.
vagina.
Yeah.
Christianity
Okay.
is more, it's not that it's not behavior based, but it is equally, if not more, thought, inner self, heart based. Early in my yeshiva education, I'll say it in Hebrew so that people will know I didn't make it up. Lo hamachshava ha'ikar el ha'ma'aseh. It is not the thought that counts. Not that counts. That is the essence but the deed.
Right.
Judaism is very behaviorist. And for example, and I mentioned this at Franciscan, I've said on the radio very clearly, I prefer you like Jews, but there are a lot of Jews I don't mean. It's just a little silly to say I like a whole group. There's no whole group I like. There's no whole group I dislike.
Mm-hmm.
But in any event, I don't care if you dislike Jews. And that is it goes to the essence of what my belief is. I want to know how you act. The left does this all the time. Oh, you treat gays beautifully. Like in my case, my wife and I are godparents to a gay couple's children. But the fact that I'm against a same-sex marriage, that makes me a hater. Mm-hmm. So how I treat gays is irrelevant. It's what I think. This bothers me that your thoughts is a demerit.
But see, same-sex attraction, you would just think that the behavior is presumably sinful.
Commentary on the Torah. Mm-hmm. I already written 22,000, which of course I've never done. A man shall not lie with a woman. And so getting into that, the point I wanted to make was for the left, what considers me awful, not what I do. So my treatment of gays is excellent, but the fact that I don't think marriage should be redefined is enough to make me a hater, bigot, homophobe, and all the other terms that they use. Anyway, back to us.
Let me interject here. So Aristotle in the Nicomachean, the vicious man is the one who wants to do evil and does it. And he has the incontinent man, the continent man. But he says the virtuous man is the one who wants to do the good and does it. And so to me, I have children. If one of them held anti-Semitic views, but treated you kindly, I would say, well, that's better than holding anti-Semitic views and being bad toward you. But I would think that's not where I would settle.
That's fine. That's fine. I respect that.
And I also want to say that I think I agree with you that that obviously adultery and lust are different things. If they weren't different things, we wouldn't have two separate words for them. But
right. Also, which comes somewhat of a revelation to my Christian friends, is there is no sin of the. There are 613 laws in the Torah. None of them say do not lust. You can't covet. Covet is a very different concept than lust. It means you want to take what one presumes, and yet you're not allowed to covet those either.
But do you make a distinction between sexual desire and lust? Do you see a distinction?
No, I don't.
Okay, so therefore, if you don't see a distinction between those two things, I can see why you would think it insane to tell somebody they shouldn't
I don't
lust.
know how you sexually desire your wife and have no lust for her.
Oh, I do.
Okay.
So I would think
that's interesting.
I would think that lust...
So you think, so lust... Okay, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
This is interesting. I've never confronted it quite this way. So lust
reduces the subject to an object. It subordinates the dignity of the person to the good of a selfish pleasure. It's also a distorted sexual act. So it's an act which is contrary to human nature or to the end of the sexual act.
Okay, so if sexual desire and lust are different, can you sexually desire a woman you're not married to and not lust for her?
Yes.
Oh, well,
I would think so.
I haven't heard that from a Christian
because
before.
I suppose there were like three stages, if I would think of it. Like, if I board an airplane and I sit next to a beautiful woman and I'm attracted to her sexually, how could I not be?
Okay,
that's beyond my control. Now the next step could be, now what do I do with that? Do I sit here and fantasize about what I could do with her sexually? Like at that point, the will is engaged, and that is something within my control.
Right.
So I think it is important to make that distinction, and I think that might be part of what drives some Christians neurotic if they think, well, sexual desire is a sin. Can't sexually desire anybody who isn't my wife.
Well, I think not only Christians, but I think in some cases with Jews too, that it does drive people.
All right. So the first question I have is the term lust in general. Where is that coming from? What's that translated from? And like, he's got I'm gonna just call him Aquinas. What was it again, Matt? Matt. Okay, Matt was saying he's got this definition for lust that I was trying to find. Like I found the Greek of what gets translated to lust, and it sounds like actually covet is one of the synonyms.
Yep. Well, it says you can covet objects, but you don't lust after them.
I think it's like a strong.
It's more
desire,
sexual. People
or
use
it's
more
co- It's
sexual.
coveted as like, well, let me just.
Like I don't think you get a boner when you covet.
Well, it's different.
I agree, Joe. It's a sexualized term, but people use it. They shoehorn it into like I lust after this vehicle that I want, or I lust after
this
a
I
cheeseburger.
screenshotted this from like
They do. They use it that way. Shouldn't. Yeah.
this is the Greek term. I
Inappropriate.
don't know what that term is, but the one definition is to set one's heart on a thing, desire or covet, and then it actually has an
For lust?
example. Yeah, this is the Greek term used.
Oh, be damned.
This is what word was lost. So maybe I'm like, are we using the right term here? Because this is the Greek term from Matthew 5:17, where Jesus says, "But I tell you that everyone looking at a woman," and actually this translation says, "to covet her has already committed adultery with her in his heart."
Yeah, and Dennis makes he starts off by differentiating lust from covet, like Joe had said. The covet is applicable to things where lust is a sexual perversion. So I think essentially at its core, what lust is describing is an appetite for sex of the doesn't matter if it's the opposite sex, but it matters with the human that's perverted.
Where does that term come from in the Bible, though?
I think that's what Matt's
is
trying
the
to pin
term.
down. He's trying to think if it's
Because this other term, like this is the problem. Like I'm not a Greek scholar, so but it uses the same term that Jesus or that's written in the Greek in Matthew 5:17 is also it looks like the same term that Paul uses in Romans 13:8-9, which is translated to owe nothing to anyone except loving each other. For one who loves another has fulfilled the law. For quote, do not covet or do not commit adultery, do not murder, do not steal, do not covet. And that word covet, if unless this is wrong, is like that same word Jesus uses in that previous
lust.
one.
yeah.
So why do they translate them two different ways?
It's an interesting question.
Well, I think there's words obviously have overlap. Like you can have, say for instance, the word courage, the words courage, boldness,
Bravery.
and bravery. Yeah, that's exactly right. You have those three words, and frequently when you look for the definition, one or more of those words will be in the definition describing the word in particular, and they're interchangeable because they have overlap in their definition. However, they are precise words. And in the Iron Disciples, what we constantly face is people shoehorning words because they don't have the proper understanding of them to get, and that's how communication is. Like you'll get the outcome you want until you go deeper. And then you see like the puzzle piece isn't quite fitting. You're kind of jamming it in. So covet could work under some circumstances, but I think where lust goes a little bit further, where covet doesn't, is the desiring of something perverted in the sexual field, and that's where this conversation.
I don't think we're there.
Right,
yet.
right.
I don't think we're there yet.
Well, this is where they're going.
I know, but I still want to address something with what Mike's talking about. Is like, so Paul's talking about things, though. Jesus is obviously talking about like women.
Oh yeah,
And I don't know if they had like, does the Greek have a word for lust specifically, or do they just use covet for both?
Well, that's not necessarily the word covet.
Because if I was translating, I would.
That translation that I screenshotted was one of the definitions was to set one's heart on a thing, desire, or covet.
right.
So
or
I
covet.
think it's like kind of a blanket term. Like I think that covet term is kind of
They're
it's
almost
like you
synonymous.
desire,
Yeah.
either an object that you don't have that's not yours, or someone's woman sexually that's not yours.
Right, and then John pulls it further into. Well, what I was going to say is like, if they didn't have that distinction between the word, and say the translator said, "Hey, we have a better word to describe the coveting of a woman, it's lust. So I'm going to use
precise.
lust. It's more precise,
Yeah, it's more
than
precise.
say covet."
Yeah.
I could see him doing that
Yeah, and that's
because
so.
essentially it's the same thing. I mean, really, it's tomato at the end of the day, right?
But I mean, like, you couldn't use lust to describe. You can't. Okay, so I pulled up
People
this verse.
people do. They'll
People
say, like,
do.
you lust after money.
They do. So here you go. First
Yep.
John 2:16. I was looking for this verse because I know that in the translation, I think the ESV, they use lust here. And so First John 2:16, for everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life comes not from the Father, but the world. And that's describing the three ways that you can be sinful: the flesh, the eyes, the pride. Being
Let's see
lust is the describing word that he uses there. So it's like it has to do with appetite, desire.
For pleasures.
But yeah, and
Yeah.
like, would you say because, okay, for instance, our friend Josh, who wrote the book Being Desperate for
It
Christ,
uses the term
like,
desire.
would you
in
could you
other
say you lust for
translations.
Desire,
Christ?
same thing, yeah.
The desire, right?
Mhm.
But the reason why,
Great point.
because that's what I was going to say, for desperation, right? You wouldn't say I lust after God, because the connotation of that word is negative, right? It
In
has,
English.
well, the way that we understand it, right?
Yeah.
And that's where we're speaking English.
Well, that's why I asked. Like, do the Greeks actually have a precise definition for or a word for lust, or is it
Check.
just covet?
I'll check.
You know, because they might not have. I mean, it might be the etymology of the word.
See, that desire word, it looks like it's the same one as, like when you directly translate, it says wish in Google Translate. But if I go straight to Wiktionary,
Wish, desire, covet, lust, want.
this is the word
Yearn.
used in 1 John translates to yearning, longing, desire, craving.
Yeah.
These are all describing almost the same thing.
Yeah.
So you would say craving would be for food, longing.
Well, the reason why I brought that specific verse up is because you have these academic scholars gathered together in a room, and they're reading the Greek manuscript, and they're deciding on English words that are going to translate the meaning of the verse best to us who understand it. So I'm not going to talk to an 8-year-old about Torah. You know, I'll tell them
Right.
the 6th commandment or the 10 commandments, but I'm not going to know the 637 whatever rules. So I think that there's where we have to, the discussion really
17.
begins on settling on what the heck is a perverted desire and what
They talk about
constitutes
that, so we
one.
should
Right.
probably save that.
Yeah, that's
well,
where I
no,
think-
they will. I think it would be cool to talk because he was just getting into like his wife,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Can you lust after your wife?" And he was
Yeah.
like, "No."
well, it's like, would you
He said,
say
could you have
lust after
sexual
God?
desire for your wife? And then he said yes. And then he talks about
Well, I
like
think
because
the-
they're trying to make a distinction right there,
Prager's kind of like,
almost like you
with the
can't.
Greek term used in the Bible, I would say Prager's right in that they're the same because it's translating directly to desire and whatnot. So you would desire your wife. I think it's, then we use in English, lust is a misplaced desire.
From
maybe.
a Jewish standpoint, he's right. Possibly, yeah. And, you know, he's getting criticism from us because we know lust has a perverted context. or
I think the
connotation.
idea of like when you think about lusting after your wife, you get this idea like, you know, it gets a little bit racy. You know, you start thinking about like some kind of role playing maybe happening. I don't know. Like you think like things kind of might get a little bit.
They migrate into
They might
some
go because
more-
lust in itself is just like a hot, sexy kind of like
to
word.
you, right? Yeah.
For most people, it's just like got that taboo
Sure.
you know, to it. So I can see why he would say that.
I would say
You
my
know,
impression.
when you say like sexually desire, it's
I
like
would-
okay, yeah, boner's gone. You know, like,
yeah.
that's
I'd
over.
say
now.
my impression,
Old
like
school.
Yeah,
before looking into this more, I would have just viewed as lust is sexual desire outside of marriage. Like that's kind of all I viewed it as. It's just misplaced desire. It's not in the right context.
mm-hmm.
But I guess he has, as we'll see, acts that are considered like out of bounds, which I don't know where you get that from. In the
Oh
Bible.
yeah, that's gonna be fun to get into.
But I think for the
Thou
important,
shalt
I think
not
the
doggy
important thing
style.
for people to understand is like, there's a word that describes perverted sexual desire, and most commonly, what people are gonna say when they hear that is gonna be lust.
Mhm.
They're not gonna say covet.
Yeah.
They're not gonna say that. So if Dennis was to say,
They
I
usually
lust,
use kink, but I don't think that's a biblical term.
like kinky,
Yeah, it's like a kink.
yeah, or like fetish or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of like the reason why lust gets used that often, because it is like the flagship term of like, describing what a sexually perverted thing is. And some people don't even treat it that way these days. Like, because we live in a really fallen world where it's like lust, it's kind of like, you should lust after women,
Yeah.
your wife. and
You
stuff.
should have like a hot, sexy relationship with your wife. And I think that's what
Absolutely.
Prager's kind of getting at a little bit.
Well, that's because he viewed the terms as the same.
Right, right.
Which Prager's very familiar with the actual text, and I
Mhm.
can see why then you have
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, from what you brought up, absolutely. Yeah.
Where the Greek is. But I mean, what is the Hebrew? Because he's reading Torah.
Yeah.
So that's
well,
not
he
even
just
Greek.
says the Torah doesn't have anything to describe that.
Let's see what is in the Torah. What is in the
He just said it. That bitch knows everything.
Well, I'm saying, what's the word?
I think it's covet. Oh, the Hebrew word?
Well, there's an adultery and covet. I don't know if there's any term or any discussion on lust.
I think he's trying to find what Hebrew word is covet.
No,
And what does it sound like? Or what does it mean?
Oh, yeah.
That sounded
Very
complex.
similar, man. Passion, desire, lust, craving, itch, rage,
Ooh.
gusto, zest,
Gusto.
eagerness,
Zest.
delight.
I mean, people a lot of times use it like lust for power. Like you have a
Oh,
craving,
yeah.
a
Oh, yeah.
desire for
That's
power.
why I was saying they
Yeah.
use it like covet.
Lust for power.
You know,
Well,
when
it's
covet's
common.
outdated, no one will say that. It's like covet. What does
Yeah.
that even mean?
That's true, dude. That shit is outdated.
No one uses covet, dude.
That's
He's lost.
That's so true.
covet your power.
It was, yeah.
Be like, you what? In the cabin?
Let's
what is this?
should we continue?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Yep. Prager.
People to be neurotic.
It's like if I said to you, don't think of a pink elephant.
Well, better. Don't. You're in a restaurant. Don't think of food.
Right.
Because that's a real
Stop it.
life.
Very bad. Stop it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd go crazy.
That's right. And by the way, the more you don't think about it, the more you think about it. So there's that element too.
Agreed.
I differ with you, and I did with the father. And by the way, I mentioned this is very important to note. What a credit it is to Franciscan University. Having me. As a religious Jew, obviously doesn't believe in Christ. I'm not a Christian. And B, that they discussed openly with me at the university what they heard me say on Daily Wire. But he did raise this issue about sexual objectification, and that reduces the human being as one created in God's image, etc. Just what you said now. And I have a different view of that.
Sure.
I think this. I suspect you may have not heard this before in one of your podcasts.
Here we go.
From any of your guests. I think that if a loving husband and who is a loving husband, and I have a word to say about what a loving husband is, a loving husband who sees his wife in the bedroom as a sexual object. I will be totally open with you. I have said on the radio, if after X number of years married, your husband still sees you as a sex object, you are both very lucky.
I would say it depends what you mean by sex object. If what you mean is your husband continues to find you sexually desirable, I would agree with you. If what you mean is the man essentially treats his wife as a warm body to masturbate in, not taking into account her feelings, her desires.
Oh, of course,
Right.
that's not this. That's not objectification. Has a dirty name. He said he doesn't. The father said one shouldn't even objectify baseball players, and it was an excellent analogy. I had thought of that myself, but I do objectify the baseball player.
I'm not sure if I agree with him.
But it doesn't mean that you automatically mistreat the baseball player.
That's right, but I'm in a different relationship with the baseball player than I am with
Correct,
the
but there
one
is a
I'm married
place
to.
in the totality of a relationship. So here is my motto, because I talk about men and women every week for an hour on my radio show, and I have for about 20 years. And that is, you make love outside, sex inside the bedroom. Fantasization of the sex act to make lust. It's okay to have someone you're mistreating her.
Yeah, I think I'd want to know what you mean by using language to convey something that I might agree with.
Yes, you might. I think you really might. I agree with you. It certainly doesn't mean mistreat. Sex.
You can tell you still understand each other. That's why you're so smart. He's like, I think I want to.
All right, so I think we're having some audio issues on that. But anyway, while Dave fixes that,
Good points.
um,
Are we on right now or
yeah,
no?
we're on.
Hey guys,
I love your legs.
I love yours too, man.
I
see
mean, I think
legs
it's
in
fine
the
to go up
gym
to your
all the
wife and be like,
time.
"You're hot."
Dude,
Like,
girls like the women.
I want my
love
wife
that.
to be like, "I want to love those biceps. I like them veins,
I'd be like, thank
baby."
you. I am a body.
I want her to come
and
and
these are
grab me
mine.
and just make me feel like
Yeah.
a piece of meat.
Like if your wife comes
That's
in like
hot,
says
dude.
you're looking vascular today, you know it's way better than I love your soul. It's like my
I
soul.
want her to like grab me and like be, you know, grab her, whatever, and be like,
Dude,
"I'm
women
taking
love that.
you today.
Yeah,
You're
I
my
think
woman."
I don't think there's anything
a lot
wrong
of
with
this
that.
You know what I
discussion-
mean? Like it makes it like I don't want to be like, "Baby, I'm gonna make love to you again.
Is it okay if I say that I really like your
I love you. I'm gonna stick it
They
in
look
as I say I
supple
love you,
today.
so you know that I love you." And this is love making.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I just feel like it's just a little, weird.
Creepy.
It's a little creepy, dude.
Well, it's because it's like we have a deeper communication than having to reaffirm things verbally like that. It's like
Yeah.
it's like dismissing
so
that
yeah,
whole,
it totally,
like
totally.
heartfelt, like deep running connection that you
Instinctual,
have
like,
with
just-
a woman,
Ugh.
where you have just a connection that speaks for itself, and you
For
don't
sure.
have to use those
Right.
affirmations.
It almost kills the moment.
well, what
bro.
it does is it causes it to be two
It's
dimensional.
like putting your nuts on
It's
an
like
ice cube.
You want it to be three dimensional, where you have that earned, you know, rapport between your wife, and you guys just sailed.
Yeah. Like you see
That's
her
what
out
I
on
want.
the cruise and her hair's blowing and she's really pretty and she's wet off of like the pool or something. You just grab her
It's
in
like Titanic, dude.
the bathroom or
grab her
whatever.
in
I
front.
just think that like it's important for Christians to like think that that's okay because otherwise they're going to think about that with other people, you know, or something.
Well, I
And
mean,
don't
if
think
you have
that's
to
wrong if
affirm
it's
your
your
wife like that, I would say that you need to at least you have like some deep work to do on your connection level. Like if you're in the bedroom with your wife and what you're doing, you can't sense and understand if she's liking it, and you know your communication is so distant that that's not connecting. Then man, like that's like you guys got a lot of work to do.
I think that's what's his name? Matt's saying. Matt's
What?
saying that. He's like, like making love versus objectifying. I think he thinks about the objectifying is not taking into consideration the other person's like emotions or like whether they're with it and they like it and they're like, you know, it's something they're enjoying. It's like, you know what, you're my woman. You got done washing dishes, wash my britches. I'm banging you now. Yeah. And you know,
clothes off.
you know, I think that's not what he's talking about.
No.
I
You
think
know.
they just have definition problems on
Yeah.
both these, like with lust and with objectification. Like,
Yeah, right.
I think like each other want to kind of view each other as sexual objects to some extent.
For sure.
Like it's not like a literal object, but
We
it's
are
still-
physical beings.
yeah.
that
You're
have
a body.
physical bodies.
You know what I mean?
you know
Like
what
we're
Like he brings up like the
into bodies too. Like like we are bodies.
Yeah.
Like, it's part of who we
Yeah,
are.
physical form,
Yeah.
dude. And like he was bringing up like CrossFit and like because it goes past that. Like I want my wife to look beautiful, you know, and I take care of myself because I want to look like a strong, visceral, vital, you know, man. You know, that's
And
fertile. I don't want to look like some.
Well, I think for a lot of people, if they've been attractive in their life, like they know you're gonna feel better if you feel attractive. And that's where I think
100%,
Dennis
dude.
Prager's is dead on
100%.
because you make love outside of the bedroom. You affirm your wife. You tell her how beautiful she is. That's like that working for that third dimension of communication and validation. And she feels like a woman. And
'Cause
she
if
knows
you-
she's
yeah.
attractive to you.
Yeah.
So all that stuff doesn't have to be said because you've done all that. You've done that because you want to.
Because you tell her like
Every
she,
day.
you know, you're really beautiful. You're
Yeah.
gorgeous. I love the way you look.
Oh,
in
you
that
catch
dress.
her off guard with that
You
stuff.
know, like you know.
But I mean, that's making love.
But you're also
then-
objectifying in the way because you're saying that dress looks great on you. Your hair's beautiful, or like you know the way you're moving today, or just something.
Well, here's
it's,
the thing.
it's her body.
Like a
You
lot
know
of
what I mean? It's
what
not like your spirit
I
really
watched some
turned
of
me
the
on
other
today.
stuff from Pints of Aquinas. Like he has a great content. He wrote a book about pornography from completely removed from a religious point of view, just biologically speaking, how it's horrible for you. And he has priests who come on talk about the recovery of all the men that they've dealt with. And you know, a big issue is people, and this is where I think his head is, Matt's head is when he's having this conversation, because I've watched all this material, is that men have an issue with objective, like nowadays.
Oh, yeah,
not
definitely.
Dennis Prager.
Definitely.
He's completely in a different world, on a different planet, like what he thinks men are like. Like
That's a
with
great
the
point.
pornography, the way that they objectify through a screen, you know, and it's one person. They're not having any communication whatsoever at
Well,
all.
I think that's what casual sex
And-
is as well.
Well, it's a little bit worse, right? You
Yeah.
know, because two people are now
Objectifying each other.
Yeah.
It's both are using each other for short-term dopamine.
Yeah, and I think it's even worse because they're two souls, because of the one flesh thing, and it's just
Yeah.
like, that's another level. It's another level of you just tied your stuff to. I mean, when Paul says,
Yeah, I was talking to this one
he
guy.
says the sins against the self are worse. Like when you go with a prostitute, you become one with that woman. He's like, you know, the sins against the flesh are they're worse. He says it, you know. So that's again kind of be falling into line with Dennis, where it's like, okay, what's worse, you know?
Right.
Mhm.
Dave, how's the audio? Should we try again? Try further?
But yeah, we going. I want to say like porn though, for a lot of like the younger generations that haven't had, well, you know, even my generation, I know a lot of guys that can sort of just detach them from like actually understanding what it is to be with an actual physical woman.
Yeah.
And like understand like how
He
what
talks about
that's
that
like.
coming up.
Right. So I understand it from like because they're
Joe
definitely-
hasn't watched.
if
the
you're
interview.
gonna be a man whore, I'm not saying I haven't, but like if you're gonna be a man whore, I was just
You
saying
watched
because
it,
you
you
were.
did.
Yes, I watched it with you. We listened to it together.
Oh, okay.
If you're going to, you know, like I was talking to this one guy, he's like, yeah, this guy's been with over like 300 chicks or whatever, and he's like, it's so hard for him to like focus on a girl because like a song will come on, or like some food, or a movie, or like a joke, or you know, just there's so many triggers for this guy to think of other chicks.
Yeah, it's
You know what
called
I mean?
corruption of the mind. You sear your conscience. I mean, there's like, just because you're forgiven doesn't mean it's a consequence eraser. Like, people need to get that through your head. Forgiveness is a thing, but consequences will persist.
They don't
And
call
if
it
you get-
baggage for no reason, dude.
Well, dude, I mean, you're
They
gonna
don't.
be. That's why the message is to the young guys is like, stick it out if you can. Wait for your wife to do all this stuff with, because you don't know what you're gonna.
But also know if you're looking at porn, when you do get with a woman, it's going to be totally different. Yeah, porn ain't coming close to the real deal.
Nothing.
Jacking ain't close to.
No, it destroys it.
Yeah.
Hit us, Dave.
Dangerous, Dave. Dangerous with that mouse. He didn't even see it. He's just going in there with a fork.
For me, sexually, that will really turn me on. And it may not really turn you on. Are you being objectivized? Or are you doing it because you love her and because she wants
Well,
it?
first of all, she's asked a question in which I presumably am free to decline.
As she,
right,
if she's
so
not free to decline, and there's no room for
right,
that.
so there is
objectification
so
and
if she's
coercion
asking
are
me a
not the same
question
thing.
which I'm free to decline.
Right. So,
she's not
so, honey, would you put on this sexy outfit for me? Are you okay with that?
me.
Yeah.
Bloody hell, that's a question I didn't expect you to ask.
Well,
me.
you opened it up.
I would not be okay with that.
That's interesting.
I don't think.
Even in the bedroom.
It's not that I'd be morally opposed to it. It's just that I'd feel uncomfortable with it.
Well, my view is that the more comfort the couple has, the better the relationship.
I think that's right, so long as comfort doesn't lead to what I would consider to be sexually perverse acts.
Well, why
like
is it sexually
sodomy.
perverse to wear a sexy outfit?
It's not, and that's why I said I'm not morally opposed to it. But if
All
you're
right, okay,
saying
so your
that
discomfort is personal. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's not an area I need to get into.
one thing I would love you to get into, because you did say this in the email, is you think that the widespread
It's a
proliferation of
tragedy
pornography
beyond-
is
I gave
destroying
it-
teenagers.
yes.
Help people hear this side
Yes,
of what...
well, I gave an example tonight. So I'm very friendly with a young woman. She's 23, very, very close to her. People could guess who it is because I do a podcast with her.
Okay.
So she is so open, God bless her. I don't think she would object to my telling this story. In fact, maybe it was even discussed on one of our podcasts. We're very, very open. So she was on a date, and they were both attracted. It was not the first date, and they kissed. That's all they did. They kissed. And in the midst of the kiss, he grabbed her neck
Oh.
like this. And even me, Mr. Open, was taken aback. And so was she. To her credit, when she took his hand away, she said either then or later that evening or later another time, "Why did you?" And that's what I see on the internet. That's a bad thing. That's the number of young men who learn about women through porn and not real life is a very scary thing that has developed. So I am as worried as you are about the pornification of society. When I answered the question that Jordan Peterson asked, which came out of nowhere, I'm not blaming him in the least. It was a perfectly legit question, but it came out of nowhere. I was thinking still in the way I have always defined it as Playboy magazine. That, to me, that was porn. The stuff that is out there now is not what I think of when I'm asked the question. And so I did say this to the father tonight, and I'm sure it shocked everybody there.
Did you ask it? No, keep going. I was about to make a bad joke.
You'll get it. You'll get it intellectually. It'll blow your mind, I think. So my dad was an Orthodox Jew. Never drove on the Sabbath, never ate a non-kosher food, wore a yarmulke in the house, sent the kids to yeshiva. I mean, he was the real deal. He was the president of the Kingsway Jewish Center, still exists, an Orthodox synagogue in Brooklyn, New York. And he subscribed to Playboy, which shocks Jews as well as non-Jews, to be honest.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Glad that it does.
Yes. However, so I was raised in a very sexually open home that was also deeply religious, and I never found them conflicting, as he didn't. And so he was an outlier, I acknowledge, and I am an outlier, I acknowledge. However, I want people to understand my parents were together 72 years, and they loved each other crazy. When she died at 89, he died at 96. He basically, his life ended. His screensaver was "I love you, Hindi." That was his nickname for her. Her name was Hilda. And she knew he got Playboy. This did not trouble my mother. Oh, that's Mac. Okay, I'm married to a live wire who was faithful and who loved me, and she was crazy about him, and that was it.
What would be better? For your father to love your mother and get Playboy, or for your father to say, even though I'm tempted to look at pornography, my wife's body is enough for me, and I'm not going to look at that even though I'm tempted to?
That's a very
Which is
fair
better?
question. I don't have an answer, which will... I should give you the answer you want.
I think you should too.
Yes, that's a good point. You do. I don't know what that means enough. As I said, which bothers, it's funny, there were two groups that it bothers, the very religious and the radical feminist. When I say that men are variety built in, God made male sexual nature as variety oriented. As one, I don't know who put it this way, but one wit put it, a woman loves a man and men love women. Now, I don't want men to go around loving women. I'm totally opposed to that. I am and insist on my being. It's not even debatable that I am faithful to my wife. It's a given. My wife knows that other women are a turn on. She knows it. It does not bother her. Right. She is to my luck, I am married to a woman who does not find male sexual nature frightening. Most women do, and by the way, I understand that.
But again, I think we have to make the distinction between sexual arousal and sitting and fantasizing or watching.
Actually, they looked at her.
And if you, well, that's sad too, I think.
Why is it sad?
Because I think pornography is a perversion of the sexual act.
Yeah, well, okay.
Which is holy.
What if they looked, okay.
Let me finish. Yep. Which is God's first commandment to humanity, be fruitful and multiply. It is the most intimate thing two human beings can do together. Not watch The Office, not go for a walk on the beach. It's the fundamental act that brings about the family, which brings about society. I'm of the opinion that if you pervert that fundamental act,
I don't know why it's perverted the marriage. Why is it perverted? Why is it perversion?
Because it usurps the natural end of sexual intercourse. If I eat food and then force myself to throw up, I'm usurping.
Okay, but I don't think that it's a fair analogy. Let's say they looked at. Very fair. Let's say they looked at bathing suit ads, not at Playboy. Mm-hmm. Just they looked at that other beautiful women together. And it was okay with my mother. Obviously, the assumption is it was okay with my mother. If it wasn't, then it's not a good thing. Clearly, I am more worried about men having to hide their nature.
See, when you say God has built into their nature a desire for variety, it sounds like you're saying that therefore it would be unnatural to not look at pornography.
Well, forget the word pornography because it's so loaded. I'm anti-pornography. But if pornography means anything that is arousing, then it could be a bra ad.
Right. I think I could define pornography like this. I could say material which depicts erotic behavior.
Not behavior. There's no behavior in Playboy.
Okay, well,
no, it's not behavior. That's an important distinction.
No, I think when you say behavior, I think you're meaning video or acting out.
No, I didn't. That's why
What do you mean by behavior then?
No, I don't. I am not advocative of watching sexual behavior.
But I want to know what you mean by the word behavior, because if I'm going to say it's
sexual activity between two people.
Okay, so even a photograph in Playboy of two people engaging in a.
But there weren't such. When my father
you're
got
opposed to that, but you're okay with a man looking at one naked woman, let's say.
Yes, or they weren't even naked then. They were covered in their privates.
Right.
But you're opposed to them looking at anything that might be arousing. What if a woman is wearing a regular? What if a man is turned on, which every man is, by an attractive woman in a nice dress? That's a turn on. So no, please answer.
I will.
So is that bad?
I'm going to answer
with his wife.
I'm going to answer, but let me unfold this a little bit. I think pornography can sometimes be a difficult thing to define. I would say, and let me see if I can redefine it for you, material that depicts something that's intended to sexually arouse or replace a prostitute. I mean, the word pornography comes from two Greek words, porn, the drawing of the prostitutes. It's meant to serve an erotic function.
What if the eroticism is then
so I'm okay
looking at with the wife?
I'm okay looking at breasts and I'm okay looking at bums. And if you go to the Sistine Chapel, you'll see that Catholics are perfectly comfortable with nudity. But I think that nudity can be presented in a way that upholds and expresses the dignity of the person. So I could say, okay, I could look at that and marvel at God's creation and the beauty of woman and the beauty of man. But I think I could also look at a lingerie catalog and in my mind treat this person as a mere object. So I would say that in one aspect, I'm okay looking at breasts, let's say, Sistine Chapel, but in another sense, if I'm looking at a lingerie catalog with the intention of lusting, that wouldn't be okay.
What if I'm looking at the lingerie catalog with the intention of getting my wife lingerie?
I think the intention does matter, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
We're not that far. I'm not advocating this.
I know you're not, and I really want that to get...
Yeah,
I really want that to come
yes,
through.
It's very important, but I'm so worried. Remember,
Hit play on that, try to get back up. I don't know what you did.
Let's just be honest. Dennis Prager has all his dad's Playboys. Doesn't want to give them up.
Yeah, he's like, they're mine now.
I come from
All right. So I think there's a lot to cover there. The first thing I wanted to kind of go back to the beginning is, or the beginning of this section was when he was talking about stuff being like, quote, sexually out of bounds.
Yeah.
From the Catholic standpoint here, like, who defines that?
No one really. No, it's a tough one.
Like, to me, in my view of it is, if you guys are married and you agree upon it, and
Fair
it's
game.
not like literally injuring yourself, like, fair game.
I'm telling you, dude, like,
That
there's
one
so
position-
many people with their, traditions, bro.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And the Catholics, they are known for their traditions. And I think, like, if you were to go to a third world country, the way some of those people dress, you're going to be like, that's indecent. The way they eat with their hands in India, that's indecent. They don't wash. They don't have toilet paper. They're wiping their hands with their own hand, their asses with their hands. So they got a poop hand, and they're walking around like that. Indecent, right? And we look down on that. There's this condescension associated with the way that we see having dignity about the way we conduct things. And that is true, though. Like, there are certain, like, you can't argue that wiping your ass with your hand is better than wiping it with, like, paper or water. Like, your filth is on your body. Okay? So I think that we all have to know that because I've talked to, like, some friends that have been hurt by pornography, and we've all, like, most of us here, especially nowadays, like, the kids with the phones, like, you're not going to, unless your parents are very protective.
Everyone will be exposed to it.
To some degree or another.
bro. It's
Right.
like every kid. You don't have to, like,
You're
when
talking-
I was a
and-
kid, you find like a little crumb or like a piece, like a corner of a titty, and like you almost make out a nipple. You're like, oh yeah, like
Yeah.
or some National Geographic, like anything,
Yeah.
dude, anything. Like I mean, like,
Penny catalog.
bro. And now
Yeah.
these kids got
They're
these
awesome.
phones. It's like unlimited. You could like
Yeah.
go like beautiful sunset and
And the
boobs
point-
come up, and you're like,
the point,
oh wow.
the point there is that the amount of trauma going on in the world that's being normalized is the key feature to asking yourself what is dignified as a sexual act. Because the question that you have to ask yourself, this is what I'm encouraging the audience to ask yourself. This is the exercise you have to do with yourself if you're going to rehabilitate from trauma, is say, if I hadn't watched all that, would I want to do some of this stuff in the bedroom? And the answer is usually no, you would not. So the trauma makes a wound, the wound gets infected, and then it creates a desire. So a lot of the issues are that I think make this a tough subject for people to define, because both sides are consenting because they've both been through trauma. The husband and the wife, they've both been sort of, desensitized to sex. They're going to say, yeah, this is fine. But if you eliminated that trauma, would you want that? And going further is like a lot of women are so, and I know this is mostly true for women because their orgasm is harder to achieve. They don't have the same plug
always
it
true.
and switch a button kind of thing that we as guys have. Like guys can go bang a cantaloupe and they're okay.
Not me.
Well, I'm saying, like, if you were to do a blind
Maybe when you're like
test,
12 years old or
I'm
something.
and they do. There's movies with like American Pie.
I'm
dude
calling
banging a
guys.
pie,
They're
dude.
like
Dude banging-
young.
There's like the vacuum cleaner, bro. Like
His
it's
dad's
crazy.
not doing that. It's the
what
young,
I'm-
blown out
This
testicles
is where
of
the
a
trauma happens.
17-year-old.
So what I'm saying is this: women usually are more on the pleasing side for men. It's just bottom line. Usually they are more like.
What you're
going
saying
to
is
serve.
men want sex more than
So
women.
what I
do.
see happening a lot, and this is just what I see happening, is that the men will have a perverted desire from sex, and then they put that on their wife, which is like, again, the wife might be consenting it, and again, it's not in the Bible. Like in the Bible, you're not gonna have "don't cut your neighbor off in traffic," or like "don't short the waitress under 15%, even if she did a 20% tip job."
But I think you could just apply like the golden rule thing to
That's
the
the whole point.
Exactly.
That's the whole point.
Mhm.
Right?
But
so
that-
the golden
that-
rule gets hard and tough and confusing to apply if you haven't adjusted for trauma. That's what I'm trying to say right now.
Mhm.
But sometimes,
lot of
like,
that's
you
been
know, like,
normalized.
if your wife wants to have sex and maybe you don't, you'd be like, yeah, I'm going to have
You
sex
better.
because she wants to have sex. And
It's a
that's
commandment.
it's
That's
great.
what Paul said,
You know
right?
what I mean? It's like you don't always do things because you like you said, the golden rule. So that applies. You know, treat other people the way you want to be treated. So, you know, and them bringing up like what is like sex and like what is erotic and like, you know, it depends on who you are. Like we were saying, like, you know, when you're
what
young,
stage
dude.
of your life?
Yeah,
When
what
you're
stage of
young,
your life,
like,
dude?
My goodness,
Dude, anything, you know.
everything.
Dude, there's kids
60-year-old
in Amish
English
churches
teacher,
checking
dude, and
out
you're like, all
blouses
right.
that are under 10 layers of
Dude,
you
look
know,
at the Muslims.
fabric.
They pretty much cover up the woman, just show bare. They don't even show
They're
eyeballs.
probably watching some mountains and going like, yeah.
Oh yeah,
see
I mean
some
that's where
bosom
it
in there.
goes.
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
no
you know what
kidding.
I'm saying?
But the point that I think is not being expressed enough is that what's okay in the bedroom is an answerable question. I think to some degree.
Yeah,
You know, I think that to some degree it is. Obviously,
But it's different for different people. Like you were saying, culturally, like some people are going to want to do things, other people aren't. Like when it comes to that, it's very personal. Like you said, there's no rule in the Bible for cutting people off in traffic. So like if you and your wife, you know, have some kinks or whatever. I mean, some people find feet attractive. I certainly do not.
but that's not. I don't think that that is the kind of sexual acts that people are talking about.
I don't
gotta
know.
Be totally
but I
honest.
mean, like
no,
you're
because like
coming
when you
from,
read
like,
the Songs of Solomon, he's talking about her teeth. He's like, I love her teeth. They look like a bunch of sheep, man. You know, it's
they
like,
probably
that-
had
I
some
think it's
nasty
more
ass teeth
so-
back then, bro.
that's probably why he liked hers.
She's probably
'cause she
eating,
probably
like-
had some good teeth,
She's probably
Well,
chewing on some guff,
dude.
keeping it clean. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. She's
I
probably
think-
scrubbing it with some sheep fur. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think what he's probably going to refer to mainly is like the popularity of like 50 Shades of Grey and what that entails.
That
Which I
brings
haven't
me
read the book or the movie, so I don't really know. I only know
Okay,
hearsay
here's
on
the
it.
bottom line, guys. You guys get, and people need to understand this.
All right, John.
There's a violation of the body, right? Like you can see that. Like when somebody's a drug abuser, they're abusing their body. Like me when I vape, right? It's an abuse on the body. There's sexual acts that are like really abusive, you know, and after a while you'll see like the violence in it, or there's like an undercurrent of anger, you know, say, or like certain violence. you
Yeah,
know?
dude. When I used to see Hawker
when I
mount
think
those
about
chickens back in the day, bro,
ripping feathers
dude,
out.
he would get on that chicken and she'd be like, "I don't want to do this," and he'd be like grabbing her and be like, "You were doing this," ripping
Yeah.
feathers out and just like crazy, dude, crazy.
That's an animal with the size of a brain of a pea. You know, like, see what I'm saying? We've got bigger brains here.
Yeah,
It should
it's
be better.
true.
But still, those urges are in us. So, like, when I think about a
Yeah.
fetish, this is, like you said, like maybe role playing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're the mailman. That is a little bit weird because it's like you're not who you are. That's where I'd say, like, that's a little bit of a perversion. Now we're starting to play with promiscuity, you know? Okay, feet. I don't think,
Kinks. These
like,
are kinks.
Well, that's not, like, kinks can go to S&M, right? Which is like, that's obviously violent, right?
Bad girl.
Bad. And you're gonna get whipped. Like, go get me harder. You know, you got blisters and blood everywhere. Like, okay, is this sex? You know, what is going on here? This is like mutilation, body mutilation. But that's what happens. So like
Depravity, bro.
or like some of these more like weird kinks, you might say.
Whipped cream and chocolate.
Yeah, like I don't think there's something wrong. Like that seems nice. Get a snack and enjoy sex at the same time. I don't think there's wrong. with that.
Lingerie.
No, I think that's like encouraging the beauty of the body. I mean, granted, if it's not lingerie, we're like
Like he
You know,
felt bad asking his wife to wear lingerie.
he
No,
said he
that
felt
was him.
uncomfortable with it.
I know.
Matt
I know. He
did.
said he personally felt.
I think it was Dennis asked Matt if his wife asked him to like wear something.
Well, no.
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 That's what I
like
took
like
that as.
Matt to wear
Yeah,
lingerie.
not lingerie,
Dude.
but like something
like
like
That's
like
so
a,
weird.
Like a little G-string.
I'd be
kinda-
down with that though. I'd be like,
I would
all
do it for
right,
my
let's
wife.
do this.
Be like, dude, people in Italy do
Yeah,
this
I
all
would-
the time. We'll do it right now. You do it in that
But
bedroom.
I feel like they're just the main issues, like putting violence in with sex.
yeah.
And I think that's where
Yeah.
like usually that.
So
is
you
just-
brought up 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah,
50 shades.
Well, you
Well,
know,
that-
it's
that's
interesting.
what's
I listened to
crazy.
yeah,
because I think it's a very common fantasy with women.
yeah, they do want to be
getting
subdued.
choked, getting subdued.
That's why I brought up
you know
my
what that
chickens,
is at the
dude.
core, though? That's rape fantasy.
It
which
is.
goes back to that whole.
Don't use
What
that
is
word
that?
on YouTube.
What is really? We can't use it.
Say grape. They would
Grape.
say-
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
I didn't know that. So that thing, that attraction
Grape.
to that attraction to that, God, what's falling away from me? What's the name of that whole
S&M?
War Bride? War Bride.
War Bride.
You know, like War Bride,
Mhm.
and that's maybe built into them. But another point I want to touch on, that Dennis uses as a cop out, and I hear a lot of guys use as a cop out, is the whole we're biologically
Yeah, that's
wired.
the next part.
I'm sick of hearing that, dude.
What do you mean? It's true.
No, dude. It's
Men like different.
I
men
can
like
make the same
different.
argument for women, dude. And women they're coming out now in droves, bro. They like this. And then you could say the same thing about, say, diet. Like, I like pizza. Yeah, I'll eat it every single day, and I can because I'm free and I'm entitled, and I can be a fat son of a gun whale if I want. It's like, yeah, you can, but you're obviously not.
Well, the
like,
question is,
healthy.
did God
It's not
design it
good.
that way, or is it a result of the fall? There's really no way to objectively say that.
We're
Right,
supposed
and-
to put our
more than that,
self-control.
yeah, it's a design for willpower and strength. Like obviously, like you're never gonna be a man if you pander every desire you have. You only
Yeah.
become strong and have willpower and are able to make like hard decisions when you're in hard times if you develop that willpower and that discipline to say no to your desires, and understand how to control yourself.
And people need to differentiate desires from instincts, because this whole evolutionary.
Well, I mean, I think that's why
biology
God
thing.
obviously did have that. Why did he put the tree of the knowledge of good and evil?
Because first of all,
anyways?
you have to procreate. Like, even if there's just one woman, that desire still has to be really deep, just so you'll procreate.
Well, I think back
like it
then,
doesn't mean that you have to procreate with every single woman that you find attractive.
Well, here's something that's interesting. Is like the like 50 Shades of Grey, and I heard Rollo talking about this, and like how many like Christian women were reading it, and like it's crazy. And like women, and JP Jordan Peterson talks about like guys watch porn, women read porn.
Totally.
And it's like, and then it gets all into like what is cheating. Like women get upset with like oh, a man actually loves another woman, but like if he just like bangs her, it's a little different. It's not like as much of an insult because we're quote wired that way. You know what I mean?
that's why the genders ask different questions on cheating. Men want specifics on the physical
Yeah,
act.
right.
Women want to know, like, do you love her?
Yeah. And the guy's like, did you S his D? What happened? How many times? Right? And it's so like one thing I was thinking, it's like so there is like a bit of women wanting to be objectified. See there. So I think if you
this
like
is going back to
refuse
the,
that to them, then they're gonna-
to the trauma thing and the normalization of it. Like, that desire in them, that lust, that perversion of sexual desire, came from somewhere. Just like a man has to ask himself.
Well, I think it's perverted to like if you take it to like a crazy level, but I think there are some like there's a middle ground to be had there. That's all I'm saying.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just simply pointing out that the reason why these books have been very, like, if you go back in history, right, like most of the time, the brothels, men were the ones engaging outwardly in like promiscuity the most. Like, and that's why we say it's kind of more acceptable for men to be promiscuous. That's because history has shown that men have got more wives. They go to brothels, the prostitutes. They can do that, and it's been more acceptable culturally speaking across the ages. But for women nowadays, you see just a giant equaling of the playing field. They don't care as much anymore.
Well, I think
man.
that
So it's
all
like
With the advent of birth
the
control,
reason for
no.
all that is
it's there, dude.
they have the risk. Like, they can't be. Like,
Yeah, birth
imagine
control.
having a kid when, like, 1,000 years ago when everyone's poor. Like, that's a huge risk.
You might
they,
die.
like, sex means having kids for them.
Yeah.
Like, they're
Yeah.
thinking about birthing a child the size of a basketball.
Whereas men,
it's like that's not
They
going to be a
didn't think
turn
about
on.
that.
So that was that, and then with the advent of birth control,
Then boom,
then
it
bam,
took the shackles
girls
off.
can they can bang
And you
as
can
much
go
as they want.
research Roll Tomato. He describes it beautifully, as far as. But so that's what, again. So you eliminate that, and here we go.
Well, I'm
Here
just
we-
saying
this is what people
specifically is
really
like when
want.
it comes to the bedroom and like what's okay. Like women do obviously from the data on like all the types of novels that they're reading, which is their porn and the way that they like to get off. It's like they do desire a little bit of that dominance, and that sort of like ravishing and that like a little bit of that aggression. But I think that if they from this guy saying like making love, like you're not allowed to do that.
That's wrong.
And I
I
that's
think you
what
have to
I'm
be
saying.
assertive in the bedroom. You have to be the leader of the household in the bedroom. I think that's what
Yeah,
they
I think
really
there's a
just
difference.
want.
Yeah, you could be like
I mean, it's not
yeah.
dominant. It's not angry. It's not like violent.
Yeah,
so
like
you're
50
still.
Shades of Grey.
Yeah,
No,
or
that's
pointing, or
just
point.
right.
That's messed up, dude. You know what I mean?
But like, look at the point that I'm making that I saw Dennis use as an excuse is like men are wired for selecting a lot of mates. you know, and they just can't. And I don't think that's. I don't think.
I
It's
just
more
think
of an
Dennis has got his
excuse, dude.
rusty, crusty Playboys
Sure,
from his
man.
dad's all crusted
gotta-
up, page 26.
Maybe he does. Dude, he's obviously defending his point of view. But I think that for most, if you want to be like a well put together man, like it comes to every single desire. You know, like if it's your food, that's something serious. It's hard to bring that under control. You know,
Well,
sugar, any kind of addiction.
Oh, lust for power.
dopamine,
Power
bro.
I
is
think
more
the
than
biggest-
sex.
Money, yeah.
I
I
think
mean,
so.
like Paul says it. Like you have to not deprive your husband or your wife unless you agree to it. Like that's how important sex is.
Well, and that's the
to-
next question.
Oh.
Because I would say we'll let them talk about it first, but I wanted to go into the circumstances where men get put into like sexless marriage or like woman
Dude,
no
that's so
longer is
brutal, bro.
functioning anymore, or I think of people on deployments like, oh, your wife's or your husband's going away for 6 months. Like, what are you supposed to do? So that's
Glad
kind
I'm not a therapist.
Yeah. Let's
These are
let's
good
keep it rolling.
questions.
Dave.
Double D. No, you don't like that. I can tell he doesn't like it.
The woman calling my show, I saw pictures on my husband's computer. I'm devastated. So what am I supposed to say? You know what? You're right to be devastated. Your husband is a real sinner. He treats you as an object. What would you like me to say to her?
Here's what I'd like you to say. I think you could. I don't think you have to say. I think I would begin by validating her pain. I wouldn't dismiss it by, and I'm not saying you did this because I haven't heard this sort of phone call, but I wouldn't dismiss it by saying you're wrong to be hurt. I would say there are many things out there that your husband, I'm sure, loves you very much. And,
Well, that's my first question to her.
and you're right.
Does he love you, and is he loving, and do you have a good love life?
And so those are what all the
and
good things.
if the answers are all yes, go on.
So if the answers are all yes, I would say, well, since he loves you and since this bothers you, there are some excellent resources that I'd love to tell you about that could help him be free of pornography. Because surely you would say, if a man is looking at pornography and his wife's heartbroken, you're not saying, well, she's wrong to be and he doesn't need to change. If she's heartbroken, wouldn't you want to say to the man, here are some ways that you could quit?
Yes, I would want to say to both of them, I understand why you're heartbroken, because you think that he loves her more than you or as much as you, and I want you to know that's not the case at all.
I don't know if that's the only reason she'd be heartbroken. I don't think it's that she loves... I think that pornography trains us in selfishness.
Okay, yes, so...
It also
all right, again, what if he says to her, I'm dying to buy you some really cute lingerie. Would you be okay with that?
I would say that we're verging on what's sometimes called the fallacy of the beard. You ever heard of this? Just because you don't know when something, it doesn't mean you can't say what a thing is. This isn't a beard. But in 3 months, if I didn't shave, it would be. And just because you don't know when it started doesn't mean you can't say what a beard is. And I would say that there are blurry lines. I would agree with you. Like a Victoria's Secret fashion show. Is that pornography? I'd say probably. But pornography is equal. Some pornography can be far more wretched than others.
We're really not that far apart. One of my biggest teachings is that there are levels of sin and there are levels of good, and that we should not listen. I don't think this is not a Catholic thing, but many Protestants who listen to my show take issue with me when I say that God does not regard stealing a stapler from the office as he does child molestation.
Right.
And they call me up and say, Dennis, love you, but I got to tell you, a sin is a sin.
Yeah. No, we would part ways with our...
I know you would.
certain
Yes,
Protestant
I know. I
brethren
said
who would say
Catholics
that.
do not.
Yeah.
Catholics and Jews believe in gradations of sin. Correct.
So
okay. So there are gradations in that arena as well.
Yes. But I would say that just because something is less bad than something else, it doesn't make it good. So if you're saying...
I'm not arguing it's good.
So if you say...
arguing it's not as bad
Right.
as people often make it out to be. I am not arguing that it's good. In an ideal marriage, would my father not have subscribed to Playboy? I'll be prepared to say yes. However,
Look at you. Good job.
yes, yeah,
Thank you.
but it doesn't gain you as much as you think, because I saw their relationship for I didn't see it for 72 years, obviously, but I saw it for the
Right.
bulk of their life. And
I'm not making
the
the claim
respect with which he treated
Yes,
her.
I'm sure he did. I'm not making the claim that you have pure, pristine, holy marriage and haven of filth. I'm not
Right.
saying that those are your only
so
two
there
options.
Right. Okay. So fine. So there are degrees.
Right. But if you're saying to the woman,
Yeah.
better for him to look at porn than to commit adultery, then what I would say there is it might be less bad, all things being equal,
Right.
but less bad doesn't make it good.
Right.
And if adultery can be analogized to shooting your marriage in the head, I would say pornography is the slow poisoning of it, and that there's a great deal of that up.
Yes. Well.
In fact, Dennis, I'm going to get your book on Exodus. I promise to look at it. This is my book on pornography. It's a non-religious response to pro-porn arguments.
I'll be very happy to read it.
And I'll sign it so it'll be worth more in the garage sale one day. But there's no talk of sin. There's no scripture verses. It's all based on the 40-plus years of science that's coming out of academia, from neuroscience,
So here's the
sociology.
question. Okay, so you see, the reason I actually never talk about pornography. He asked me, you were asking me.
This is your
I
new-
never do. I certainly don't advocate it. I don't even discuss it, let alone advocate it. But it was asked, and I sort of took a vow many years ago. I won't avoid questions.
Yeah.
I wish I had known in advance it would be discussed. I would have said how much I'm horrified
Yeah.
by the pornification of society, etc. But we, I want to. There's so many different related but different tracks, and it's a very important subject. Oh yes, I was influenced by my parents' marriage. As we're all influenced by our parents' marriage. If you see your father beat your mother, you think that's normal, and you end up beating your wife. Of course, my father, I mean, the thought that he would ever lift it, he wouldn't. It's so inconceivable to me. All he did was tell his sons how much he loved their mother.
Beautiful.
I mean, constantly. So what I saw was a man got Playboy and loved his wife for 72 years. She knew he got Playboy and loved her husband and knew he loved her for 72 years. So that's what I saw. And I'm not going to sit here as their child and say, this was really awful. When I can't say it because I would be lying. But if you ask me, is there an ideal? I will argue, okay, there is an ideal. But the human condition is messy. So back to our earlier question, where we differ on, can a loving husband in the bedroom ever see his wife as a sex object? And I said, that's good. See, that's there. Finally, we have a real difference. I actually think that is a positive.
I don't know if we do have a disagreement. If by sex object you mean you find your wife sexually desirable,
I don't know what the difference is. What's the difference?
I think this is what I would say, right? A subject, like man is made and man makes his own ends, right? Slavery is wrong because we take a man who makes his own ends and would like to fulfill them. When I talk about objectification, I guess I'm talking about a sort of evacuation of the subject of the person. I'm not concerned about her. I'm not concerned about her.
You draw an inference that I'm not implying.
And that's why I say I don't know if we're disagreeing.
We may not. That would be great to resolve it. I'm totally happy with that if that happens. How you treat her is not that you will treat her badly. The moment women don't say, I'm crazy about my husband's legs, okay? But a man may not say it. Well, that's true. Fair enough. Okay. I admit, I'll ask your wife. Okay. But every man thinks that way if there's a part of her body that is particularly a turn on, to use the term, to him. That is objectification. Women don't do that. Women don't, young women do. Oh, he's got a great butt.
By objectification, do you mean I find a part of my wife's body that I find attractive sexually?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Well, I suppose that for me, objectification means sort of subordinating the good of my wife to a selfish pleasure.
You have drawn a behavioral inference from a thought, and I don't.
Yeah. But see, I still am not convinced that this, because I've heard Ben Shapiro say something similar.
All right. So we were just arguing without our mics on about objectification, like men viewing specific body parts attractive, and I think if women truly did that the way men did that, they would be watching porn like we do.
They kind of do, and it's
But
more
reading's
intense.
like reading's not the same. That's
Dude, here's what I'm
They
going
always
to
say,
disagree
dude,
with you,
his
bro.
muscles
here's
were
where
pulsating
this
his
is where I
sweaty
see a
back.
woman from knowing them a little bit. Like, I'm married, but here's the thing, dude. Like, a dude watching porn is accepting what he's seeing. When a woman's reading the words on a page, she's seeing the perfect representation of what she actually wants. They're like a level up, bro. And they're reading it, and they're seeing exactly what they
well,
want.
they can fantasize in their head. It's imagination.
That's
Girls have their
trust me.
likes, dude. They like tall guys, guys with beards, guys
Well,
with
of course
blue
they
eyes,
do.
guys with
But I think
taper
they
bodies,
don't
shoulders,
they're not
biceps.
able to like just sit and zoom in, like especially us at like 14 on like something that looks like a pair of breasts.
I
and,
agree.
Like, get turned on. Like they don't do that.
No, they
I
don't
don't know that they don't.
But I think it's
don't-
just
I
not
don't
fair
know
for him
that
to say they don't
Dude,
objectify when
there's-
they do
okay.
objectify. That's all I'm going to say.
They have this video from the 1960s, and I saw this on Instagram. And it's for girls and boys. And they have two little girls and two little boys sit at a table, and their new teacher comes in. And they get like a really hot teacher for the 60s. So it's like you would, And dude comes in who's super, super handsome. And the reactions of the boys and the girls are exactly the same. They both crack up and they get super happy. The teacher walks in, sits down, meets both of them, and then leaves after 10 seconds, and they just capture the reaction of the kids. And they're the same.
Are we literally talking about like beautiful people are hot and sexually attractive?
But like babies,
You're
don't
talking about
attract
women.
people.
They're going to,
Or
yeah,
men.
of course. But
Women
I'm just
don't
saying,
go after
The point that I'm making is Dennis is saying women don't do that. All right? And they do.
They
Maybe
do.
not to the same degree men do, which is fine. There's going to be some differences. Little boys are pervs when they're little boys.
True.
Period. But girls
true.
may not be to that same. But I don't agree with Dennis where he says they don't do that. I see women googling
Well, just
over
not at
guys
the
that-
level of men.
Well,
They're
he
not
says-
googling like.
He says they don't, and that's a
'Cause
serious
I think
misconception.
the counter
bro.
I would have is when I was
Serious.
listening to the podcast. Was it Chris Williamson? He had on some hormone doctor lady who dealt with women transitioning to men, and one part of her discussion on that was she was explaining how these women who
Sex
took
drive.
a ton of
Test.
they were like blown away what happened to their sex drive, and they also reported how much different they viewed the physical body sexually arousing.
Yeah.
Like that drastically changed.
Well, it makes sense. Why do you think
100%.
guys with high tests go into the gym to impact their own bodies? They're just more interested in the body because they have to be warriors.
No,
they have
I
to
mean
do
their
all this
their
stuff.
attraction
No,
to
yeah.
body
I
parts.
understand. I'm just taking that a step further that men, because of their high testosterone, they're even impacting their own bodies. They care about their own bodies in a different way than, say, a woman does. Because you could make that argument for cosmetics and them putting on all their makeup and all that kind of stuff because they are fixating on an eyelid, on a lip liner. Yeah, it's their own lip, but it's still the objectification of their own face. It's just a different kind.
I'm not
I
talking
mean,
about their own.
Yeah, no, but
I'm
they
saying
did not
that
understand a man's
testosterone
sex drive.
increases that desire for body, the idea of sex and connecting it with the body. Absolutely, the women who have higher sex drives, they have higher testosterone.
Yeah.
Period. But the thing that I'm making clear here that
They're just
Dennis
wired
isn't
that way, John.
is what? Yeah, they're just wired that way,
Mhm.
right? Yeah. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that it's not fair to say that women don't do that because they absolutely do. And I've seen it all the time, dude. Even old ladies, dude. The way that they predator on the young guys and they talk about their nice butts and this and that, dude. It's because they're old enough to not care. It doesn't mean that when they were young they weren't thinking the same thing because they were. It's just like you're gonna see more of that as women start to let the veil go down. I don't believe that for a second, dude. Sorry. I think boys are just, they have more of it in them. That's the difference.
Got
They
more
just have more of it.
testosterone, bro.
Yeah, they have more of it.
They want that.
But to say that women don't, that's
Well, it's not that they
crazy.
don't. It's just I would say drastically different.
it's
I would think if it wasn't, they would view a lot more porn than they do.
They
Yeah,
have
right.
their version that they
They would be
like.
following Instagram male models.
Have you ever read a
Those are
romance
just
novel?
dudes.
Have you ever read
No.
it? Okay, well, look at an excerpt of what the sex scenes are like, and they are leaving nothing to the imagination. They're literally
they're leaving-
wording it out.
I realize that, but
yeah. So like, why is that
why
in
wouldn't
there?
they be following
It's in there for a
the
reason.
hot Instagram male models at least?
Because they don't want to be embarrassed
They
by
don't-
their friends.
They
It's
never
all about
follow them, but
their-
they know they
Oh,
are.
yeah.
They do.
Why do you think all the star athletes and all this? I mean, come on, it's not hard to see. The dudes who are fat and look like crap, they don't pull nothing. I mean, and
Oh,
what they
yeah.
do pull are low, even if they're rich.
Yeah.
You know, they got to do the peacocking and all this other stuff. I mean, look at the Greek bodies, man. You know, like the idea of aesthetics is appealing to both sex.
Men and women objectify each other.
Yeah, that's where I don't agree with Dennis because I think Dennis goes way too far.
Agreed.
Yeah. But here's another thing I thought about. So Dennis had a really revealing comment on there, and he kind of humbled himself. He's like, I never talk about porn on my show. I've never, and he's just kind of revealing the fact that it's a serious issue to me if you're running a giant website, have a school, like he has, I think, a university, talk show, and he hasn't realized that porn is like in the top 10 of serious problems inhibiting people from growth, especially young people. And he's like just realizing that now. I'm like, dude, Dennis, connect with your audience.
Dude,
Connect
he's
with the people.
old.
That's what I'm saying. It's incumbent upon him because he's a resource for these kind of things where he kind of said that. And I don't know if I believe him or not. I kind of feel like he was kind of making an excuse going like, I'm old.
Oh, he's like backtracking.
Where I'm like, okay, if
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson knows about pornography and all these other guys, and I mean, come on, are you living on an island? No, you're
He's
running.
trying to protect that stack of crispy old crusties, and he's got him back
I
by
think
his
that
couch,
he was
dude.
kind of making like one of those little white lies where he's like, yeah, maybe I kind of stepped a little bit too weird here in my idea of porn. He's like,
Well, they're about to
because He
get-
said another thing that was kind of like bull crap. He's like, and they were all covered up. And it's like, dude, if your dad was 86 when he died and he had Playboys the whole time, they were not covered up in the 70s, 80s.
Dude,
and
bro,
90s.
they were trimming the
There was
bushes
all
in the
kinds
70s.
of beavers and titties. All right, you're gonna see it all.
Damn.
All right, so
Oh,
he's
yeah.
not being honest with that by saying they're basically Victoria's Secret models
True.
in a magazine, because that's not true. Maybe in like the 50s and 60s, but his dad was 86 and he was subscribed his whole life. So he's
Probably evolved for
obviously
him.
he's kind of making those little moves where he's like, I don't ever talk about pornography on my show. I've really thought about it. I'm like, seriously, Dennis? Seriously, you live in the United States? Do you have? I don't. It's hard for me to swallow that.
Yeah.
Hard for me to believe it.
He's got a bit of that going on. I was gonna say
Making some
something
little
else,
moves.
but it's typical for.
Don't say it, Joe.
What?
Don't say it.
Okay.
Let's go forward.
And so I don't know if this is, as you say, more a behaviorist
It
kind of
is.
Jewish
Yeah, I
idea.
think it is.
Because I think he said something like,
I don't care if people dislike Jews. I care how they
Right,
treat us.
But if my son or
I
daughter,
know, you're right. I would tell the same
Right.
to my child.
Right.
If my child said, I don't
Right.
like this group,
but I think this is
Yes.
what our Lord Jesus Christ is doing, in which he's saying your righteousness has to pass that of the Pharisees. It's not enough that you don't murder. You should not want to. It's not enough that you don't commit adultery. You should not
Right,
say,
but yes.
fuel the flame that
here, all
could
right,
lead to that.
I happen to think it's a good thing not to want to murder. I subscribe to that. But there's a very interesting Hebrew phrase. I'm translating from the Hebrew, so it'll be a bit awkward. In the place that a penitent stands, the most righteous person doesn't stand. And I extrapolate from that if you have bad thoughts and don't act on them, you're on a higher moral plane. Whoever has a bad thought. I don't get any credit for not having children. I'm as interested in children sexually as I am in bananas or peach trees. Okay? So I get no credit for not molesting a child. But the sick dude who does want to and doesn't, he gets a lot of credit.
So, speaking of pedophilia, said child porn. So there's no real victim in that sense
Right.
of child pornography, which we both agree is horrendous. And by viewing animated child porn. I deny that. I think that pornography inflames us to then want to act those fantasies out, and I think there's good studies that back that up. But surely you wouldn't say to the man who views animated child pornography, that's not bad so long as you don't act it out. Wouldn't you want to help this poor sick dude?
Yes, I would, but I'm thrilled that he's not acting it out. I mean,
Agreed.
Okay,
Of course.
Well, that's big.
Yeah.
We're both thrilled that he might have a poor substitute, but it is a substitute. If that were the case, no child is being used.
Yeah.
It's all animated.
Yeah.
And he
But
is,
would you use the word evil of animated child pornography? Because I certainly would.
No, I would use evil only with behavior. That's where we might differ,
Yeah.
forgetting the sex issue. You can't be evil. You didn't do evil if you thought evil. You did
If
evil
I'm
you
masturbating
committed.
to animated pictures of pornography, I'm not doing something evil.
That's correct.
Yeah, I think that's despicable. Yeah.
Really?
Yes, of course.
Who is being hurt? You have to have a victim.
Oh, I'll tell you, there's at least two people being hurt. There's the person who's poisoning himself by
Yes,
encouraging
yes,
him
you're
to
right.
think
I don't
acting out
want-
on
okay.
children. And there's
So
also
wait.
the animator.
Okay, wait a minute. We both are aching for him not to have those fantasies. I agree with you, but
You won't call it evil.
I won't call a fantasy evil.
Yeah.
There's too much real evil on earth for me to start being preoccupied with people's thinking.
It's not just thinking; it's him masturbating to
Yes,
images of
okay.
children.
Okay, so that the real question about the whole pornography issue is not pornography; it's masturbation. There is a Catholic tradition,
I disagree. I think
and
it's both. I think both masturbation is evil, but I think pornography is
okay.
a
So I
greater
don't think
evil, I would say.
masturbation is evil. Okay,
Okay.
that's. And by the way, I admit that within Orthodox Judaism, there was when I was a counselor at Orthodox Jewish camp, the kids were told by some of their rabbis that masturbation is like murder, and there was that. There was
Well,
also
that's-
that. No,
that's-
there's a statement
I
like
certainly
that.
would make that statement.
Okay, I do believe that in Catholic theology there is.
No,
there is.
no. There's no Catholic is saying that murder is equivalent to masturbation.
Okay, all right.
You might
good,
say that
good.
both are grave sins, but you wouldn't say that masturbation is a
Right.
graver sin. Even within murder, patricide
Right.
would be a graver sin than killing a
since
stranger.
we both believe murder is always wrong, obviously self-defense is killing, not murder. So murder is always wrong. Child molestation is always wrong. Is masturbation always wrong? What about a man whose wife, and I had this example. Now you may say, well, if you take an extreme example, it's not fair. But if you say always, I have to take a real life example of a man I adored his wife. I knew them when they were both well. She got Alzheimer's at a very early age in her 50s. And he dressed her and bathed her and cleaned her up for a decade. And if this man, with a wife who no longer recognized him, masturbated to get rid of his sexual tension and stayed to take care of his wife, you would say that was evil?
I would, because I think that evil is the way things shouldn't be. And I think the sexual act exists for union, and to masturbate is to thwart the end of that natural act. I also think that what we haven't taken into account yet is an industry that brutalizes women, that's often involved in trafficking women.
Oh, that's why I said I'm against all of that. I'm on your side on that.
Yeah.
Yes, I was talking about pictures, still pictures of models.
Yes.
Okay,
But I'm still saying that this brutalizes women. I think it's like what woman would you like him to look at? Like your wife, your daughter, my daughter? Would you be comfortable with
Right.
someone you know and love being looked at like that?
Holding. That's what.
So yeah,
dude.
that
Yeah.
that
What are you gonna
topic-
Are we live?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That topic, I had it written down as a question, like what this would be like a brand overarching question. What level of celibacy is reasonable to expect of a married man? And this example is one. Like if his wife gets early dementia, or she can't have sex with him, at 50, and now
She's
he's
in a
got
coma,
20
car
years
crash.
with him.
Dude, I don't know.
Paralyzed from the.
or
neck
or
down.
like I hear and read many stories where after after a kid or two, woman has zero interest in sex for a
Dude,
couple years.
menopause, man.
Yeah,
Postpartum
and so it's
depression.
like what's the man supposed to do?
All I can say is like I don't even want to answer that question. Like I
Get
think
the
you need to
worst
pray
blue
about it.
balls
Like,
known to
the
man.
Catholic Church is so hardcore
I
on
just-
masturbation. It's
just
like
chop my balls
you know
off.
Dr. Dobson,
Dobson.
focus on the family.
James Dobson. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember listening to him on Moody, and dude, I remember being a kid and he brought that up. He's like, basically he said in so many words, like he thinks it's kind of natural. And because I
saw
was,
lots of monkeys doing in California or Colombia.
we're not
bro.
monkeys, Joe. Come
I'm
on,
just saying, the things were cranking loads out 24/7.
they're monkeys.
It's crazy.
Dropping
I
loads
never
all
saw. I
over.
never saw an animal
I seen
masturbate like that,
Kids
dude.
do that, dude.
I kid. Duh.
Dude, oh my god, we're trying to have kids, dude. My wife's looking up like
Kids
threads,
masturbate all the time, dude.
and she's like, I'm kind of terrified. of
Girls
having
especially,
little
dude.
Boys. And I was like, yeah, because they all do. But it's like some of these moms are like talking about their kids are like 5, just whacking off all the time.
Wouldn't you?
You know,
dude?
I mean, like there's so many of these
They're doing
women
that?
with these
Feels
problems
good.
that it's like it's normal.
Feels good.
Well, I mean, they're kids, so they don't really
I
know.
don't know.
But the point that I'm making here, because the Catholics are
Yeah. What are they
adamant-
whacking off to?
You know what they're
Ice
whacking
cream?
off to. No way, dude. Kids know what they like when they're like 4.
I did.
Yeah,
I definitely
it's
did.
messed up, dude.
I
but it's
knew
true.
what I wanted.
Truth is that I think that's a really rough question, and I don't know what to say about it. Like
I
under
don't
those
think Paul or
circumstances.
anyone talked about whacking, snapping the turnip. Nothing. Like I
It's
know the
never
Catholics
mentioned.
consider it a sin against the body.
well, the question is, could you do it
I think
without
that it
lusting?
no.
Like, could you do it without
Yeah.
using porn?
Yeah, you can.
Then could you say
Yeah.
it's sinful?
I don't know. I get erections at 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. and I don't really know why. But like I don't know about like ejaculating to like a
Dude,
butterfly
I think,
or
I
flower.
think men and women can achieve orgasm without. I mean,
But
how could it not be possible?
That's so depraved.
What?
Sex is meant to be with a woman. Now you're like having
exactly what he's
you're
saying.
like participating in bestiality or something, dude.
That's what he's saying.
You're thinking about a butterfly?
I'm just saying, is it possible? I think it is. I
To
mean,
what?
that's- Is it right or wrong? He's asking if it's possible.
to whack off to something besides women?
Yeah.
No, to just like not use anything.
Yeah, no fantasy.
You're talking
no
like
fantasy.
a blank slate of
Blank
nothingness.
slate. Is
Yeah,
that
that's what he's
possible?
asking.
That-
'Cause
that's
then I was
impossible.
saying,
I
That's
think
some
it is.
If
impossibility.
that was possible,
I think it
I
is
wanna-
possible.
No, it's not. Tell me one time you've never had a thought
I'm not saying
period
that
in your
I have
brain.
to be the example. I just think it's possible.
You be thinking about the cashier. You be thinking about something, dude. Something's gonna happen.
No, I don't know. I'm just saying. Like, is it possible? Like, I don't know. Maybe it is. I
It's
think it
probably
might be.
possible
I
after
think
not
it's more
having sex
possible
for
than a
5
lot of
years, and
things.
then all of a sudden your dick explodes in the car. You know what I mean? Like literally, you don't have to do anything.
Does
Just
it just turn
random
off, though, at some
explosion.
point?
I think that's what I'm saying. Like, would that constitute it? I think it is. I
that,
mean,
that I wouldn't say that's natural,
you're not
bro.
thinking about anything. Just driving down the road and all of a sudden it explodes.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, like
exactly.
that
Yeah,
can
or they call
I
it like,
believe it has happened.
dude, yeah,
Some guys he hasn't touched it in freaking 16 years.
that's not natural, dude.
Yeah,
No, that's
just like
That's-
hit some of those speed bumps just the right way.
got
just have-
retrograde
Yeah.
ejaculation
What if you
going
just
on.
get- what if
Sperm is
the wet
seeping
dreams
into
just
your.
start coming in both ways.
That's what I'm saying.
Do you have
I think
control
it
over
is
your
possible.
dreams?
I think there's your answer.
Is a dream a sin?
That's a great question.
Yeah, because when I
It's
was a
more of
kid
these
and I tried to
unanswerable
stop
questions.
whacking it, I had some wet dreams. and
That's
that was
what I
the
think
best
would-
thing that ever happened to me.
I think that's why that happens because your prostate's like, I need to function.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys, there's a subject, like they get up in age, right? They're married for a long time. They stop having sex because they're just like, there's nothing happening. And then they get prostate cancer.
Could be. It
Prostate
seems-
swell up to a grapefruit
seems like
size,
a,
explode, dude.
The science on it's questionable, but I know multiple doctors have told multiple of my male friends like,
It's
you
important.
need to be,
Having
Yeah.
sex, you need to use it.
you need to be
But
regular.
like, I think both of those possible. Yeah, but I think that the issue is like, obviously masturbation can become something because again we have to reconcile Matt's point of view because he's coming from like porn being an issue and he's connecting masturbation to a chronic habit that some men have, and it's usually thwarting, to use the word he uses, them accessing, a relationship, and so
Yeah.
under those circumstances, it's a problem.
Actually, more so, this context is in a relationship.
Oh, that one, backing up
This
to that
is a
one?
good point.
Well, I don't know.
The
Let's bring
overall
the-
conversation is in a relationship,
Yeah.
which, frankly, I've heard out of some men is their actually struggle with porn was worse in a relationship,
That's because it's
Then
all
out.
messed up for them. They're
No, I
they're
agree.
jacked
Which-
up. That's
No,
horrible.
no, I agree with that.
which I
No, the fact that it is doesn't mean that it's okay. Just because it's like a frequent thing for men in relationships doesn't mean that it's like admissible.
Well,
I think
yeah.
that is an indication that their relationships are more commonly messed up. It's just look at the divorce rates. I mean, there's
Yeah.
just disconnection there. The disconnection in the relationship's going to add disconnection in the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
Period. If you're whacking off and you're married and your wife and you are like, not one of you is not in a coma or have some kind of debilitating disease, like you're cut in half.
Yeah, that's a
something like
really
that.
tough situation, dude.
like,
What are you
I-
gonna do?
Well, I'm just saying, like, then you have to remedy the marriage. Like, there's
What
a
if you have
big problem.
big
going
differences
on.
in sex drives. She's like once every.
Then she needs
week
to
and a half.
please the sexual.
Well, Paul
person,
talks
right?
about
like
that.
Paul
doesn't he?
talked
Paul
about.
likes
it,
it's cut and dry. Like,
It's her
don't
job.
withhold unless you make an agreement, and then for a time, and then after that time,
He even
unless
says, like, a
someone
time
is
of-
sick.
He even like
Or,
makes
like-
it specific. I think he says like a time of fasting or prayer. Like it
Yeah,
can't
or
just
sickness,
be like
or
I'm
sickness.
tired today, honey. He's like, nope,
Headache?
it's not gonna work.
But-
I had to work today. It's like, nope, that's not. You got to do it.
Here's my pushback on that, though.
Ooh, that's
if
not going
you are
down
having,
smooth.
That's Paul said it.
I know.
if she's just having obligated sex with you because of her
objectified.
wifely duties, is that going to be good sex?
No, it's not.
All I can say is,
It's gonna be
dude,
horrible, horrible sex, dude. It's gonna
this
suck.
is again going back to marriage. Like, so if you are with a woman, and like this is an interesting point. This is going to tie into what I'm about to say. So, if you're with a woman and she like fakes good sex with you for the first 3 years, and she like doesn't have a high sex drive, but she knows it's something you want. She wants to get you as a husband or please you for like the first 3 years, and then it just comes out after the fourth year. I don't have a high sex drive, and I'm just not doing this.
Ooh.
In the Catholic Church, they have something called an annulment,
Yeah.
where basically the person wasn't honest with you on the onset of the marriage, so you didn't know what you were actually signing up for, so you couldn't make a covenant with that person because it was illegitimatized or like made illegitimate by that person not being sincere in the beginning. And that can be like a husband who has like a porn addiction, right? And then it comes out, and she can get an annulment because of that, right? Because she signed up for something she didn't understand. So yeah, I'd say like that guy, there's two scenarios, right? The guy goes into a marriage and he knows that she doesn't have a high sex drive.
But how do you know sometimes? Like these, like a virgin woman, like she doesn't know really.
Dude,
Wow.
I think that you do. You want sex or you don't. Like it's
There's
kind
also
of
the
whether
honeymoon
you've had it
phase.
or not. That's where the fantasy begins.
There's also the honeymoon phase too. Like in the beginning, where you want to have sex all the time, and then things kind of like balance out a little bit. And like you were saying, maybe she wants to please you. So there's a lot of things taken.
That's what I'm saying. Like the Catholics, at
But I
least,
think you can kind of know when like someone really has a higher sex drive. Like they legitimately.
that's what I was
wanna
gonna
have
say.
sex.
Yeah,
You know, they're
they
like,
initiate it. They're
Yeah,
asking
yeah.
for it. Like they're like it's on their mind, dude.
yeah.
Like I think a lot of times for some of these like really vanilla Christian marriages, like they are both starved because they don't know how to ask for it and they don't know what the heck they're doing. So they have like this taboo dynamic associated with sex. They don't know how to feel good asking for it, and it's just the whole thing's just like kind of sick feeling probably. So they're not enjoying it.
I think sex
know?
should be at the center of the marriage, bro.
100%.
Straight up, like sex should
Procreate,
be
man.
like number one. Like,
Yeah.
if you're not having good sex,
Dude, if you're
I
having
don't know
good
what
sex with
you're
your
doing.
wife, you're gonna be connected to
Just
her. On a
you're
deep
not
level.
not shouldn't be
What do you
married.
think about the Catholics' view? I'm sure he would be against anything to do with contraception.
What do I think about
Yeah.
that?
Learn to control your jizz, bro.
Like,
They'd probably say that's out of
But I
bounds,
don't
too.
know if that's the worst thing. Like like
dude,
birth
the
control.
Old Testament, you had to control your jizz.
But-
you couldn't drip it on the ground.
Do you think birth control
Like
is
that was
sin,
not
dude?
okay. Do I think that's like saying is like taking flu medicine? is
Look,
sin.
it was
I
the
don't know.
same. Like it's just a condom.
It's kind of changing your biology. I don't.
I think
agree.
they'd probably say you're trying to prevent birth. Like you're trying to prevent.
Yeah, damn
Christian
right.
life.
yeah, we're not trying to have kids
So,
every 12
like, they're
months.
gonna be like, well, you're kind of playing God then. I could see their line of question.
I know, but I
would
don't
say,
agree with
I would
that,
say
dude.
like if
I
you already
don't.
have kids, like think about it. Like there's a level where you've procreated and you've populated the earth, as the first commandment said. Like, does it mean have 10 kids? No, it's like have some, have one, do something where you have some kids. Maybe you adopt, like whatever. But contraceptions, I think, like, especially if you're over 40 or something, it's like it might be dangerous for your wife. Like, that just doesn't make sense. You know, it's like you're looking after her. It's like, I don't want you to get pregnant at this time. You could get sick and die. You know, like, those kind of things exist too.
Mm-hmm.
You know? But I think that the Catholics have a very, very good understanding with the Protestants, like a lot of us in our churches. Like, they just give you a talk about porn. It's like, it's bad, you shouldn't do it, you know, and blah, blah, blah. And they don't really take it as seriously with the therapy and understanding the level of perversion that's out there that we've been subjected to by
Dude,
just
some guys
movies and
still
stuff
like that weird, dark, like messed up porn, dude. I mean, boobs
That's
are
a
just
long
not
road,
cutting it
bro.
anymore.
It's a long road to get to that one.
You know, some nice bodies
it's
aren't
just a
cutting
long
it anymore.
road to get to that place. Yeah.
But
it's
if
a
you're
long road.
starting at 7 years old, you might get there by the time you're freaking 16,
That's a
17.
long road, dude.
You might be already kinked up,
Yeah.
freaked
I
out.
search every dark corner of the internet. I don't know what's left.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, oh,
How about have sex with a real person?
that's when you
that
go,
love, you know?
I'm gonna shut up.
Yeah.
How about well, I think also another part of the problem is women are not informed on how male sex drive is. I think that would also
I
help.
don't believe that. Maybe if you grew up in a monastery.
Man, I don't think
I think we're
Christian
kind
women
of
know
demonized
anything
for it.
about it.
I think that
Christian
men are
women don't
demonized
know
for
that
it.
men
dude.
like what they like.
Well, I
like
don't
the
think
same thing
I don't
that
think they understand it at the level like
you want to give them testosterone
Yes.
shots.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, yo, you're gonna grow a beard for a month, but you'll
I was-
understand me,
I
baby.
I was talking
be
to
okay.
Not to give him that much, just like a little bit.
I was talking to someone a married woman, and she was basically like, "Can't men just turn off their sex drive like we do for months at a time, and it's not an issue?"
Dude.
And I was like, "What? Like I don't know."
Can't you stop your period for just a month? Isn't that nice?
Like she just thought like
Say hormones are hormones, bro.
I could tell with her like she could take or leave it with sex.
I would compare it to a
It's
menstrual
crazy.
cycle. I'd be like, can you stop your period? No.
Good point.
Can I stop my sex drive? Not really. Yeah, I can fight it and be like, yeah, this is not as bad as, you know, what we develop willpower and control it and, you know, take my sexual energy and divert it towards tasks and other things
Yeah,
like that.
something,
But you know, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm still gonna want to have sex, dude, a lot.
But
and
here,
I want to have good
my
sex.
question: like those girls that can, like, it's weird that they say turn it off, because that means that they can turn it on. Like, that's just so weird to me.
Yeah, or maybe it's just that I'm not bothered if I
Like,
go
I
3
don't
months
get
without
that.
sex. Like, that's maybe the vibe I would have got out of that conversation.
I'd be like, I
Number
feel
one,
bad
what
for
are
your
you having
husband.
sex? Yeah, like
I just
what-
want to hug him and be like, I'm sorry,
Um,
bro. Like that's a.
And if he's a 300-pounder,
And
I'll be like, okay, more to
That
the
makes more
story.
sense.
Yeah, it
all
makes
right,
more sense.
See what I'm talking about.
yeah.
The next question I would have is, like Glenn brought this up on the deprivation or depriving side of things. He had a good point on like you're doing the woman could potentially be doing 2 sins there. Number one, like you're not supposed to deprive him. Number 2, you're tempting him into porn.
Yeah.
Because you are, like if you make him go a month, like a man's gonna end up failing. I think, like you do that enough,
Oh,
you're gonna. So then I think you
this
could
is
get in
that
trouble
touchy
with
subject,
Paul.
dog. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
like
know.
you could. I think you could make a valid argument that, as like Paul says to like, don't tempt your brothers,
Yeah.
type thing. Like you depriving your husband and vice versa.
Like if your wife goes wildebeest, like no brushing of the hair, wearing like sackcloth and ashes every day, you're like, honey, what's going on here? We need to try and work on your attractive. Like you need to feel like a woman here, because their womanly attractiveness is like for a man is associated with how attractive they feel.
mm-hmm.
You know, and if some of these women have pushed that so far down, you know, I could see that happen in the church a lot, where like they don't.
bro, man.
Yeah. I don't want to use the word glorify, because then people will be like, oh, that's vanity.
No, but
like,
it's the reality.
they don't
bro.
enjoy the idea of like
Being
reading
sexy?
the Songs of Solomon. Like, read that book, dude. Like, there's a way to present yourself to your lover that includes like working on yourself, like making yourself beautiful, and then enjoying that process, and that's something that's okay. It's okay. You should do it. You should do it. You should like it, and you should be good at it for your husband or wife. You know, so I think that a lot of times, like, man, women just, like, some of the women in the church and men, they just out of touch with that. They don't even know it exists.
They don't even care.
They don't even work on it. And then they just have, like, some really just, it's just not there, you know?
Dude, if you want to make a man happy, yeah, straight up, sex is important, dude.
And
And
that's
you know,
not for debate.
no,
Yeah.
you know, it's important.
Well,
dude.
women know that, so, like, they use it as a weapon
It's
sometimes.
a negotiating weapon.
Oh, yeah. And that's not okay. Like, that's sin. You can't use it as a negotiating weapon. He's owed that. You know, he's owed it. You're
He's
owed
owed it.
I'm waiting
It's
for that.
true.
You're gonna
Well,
get
I
in
mean,
trouble.
like, well, here's the thing. Like, that, when I say he's owed that, it's under the circumstance that he is a good leader in the house.
Mm-hmm.
He is observing Christ. He has put Christ first and his wife first, and he's doing a good job, man. Not like this piece of crap husband that's just, you know, a shiza show, and he owes it. No. Like, put things into perspective. When I say that, it's under the right context where you're failing at your job. Right? It's not always the husband is a crap show and the wife's doing everything right. It's not always the case. I think there's a lot of cases where the husband's doing everything he can, and the wife doesn't feel attractive. Maybe she had a couple kids, put on some weight, you know. Just,
Maybe he's not attractive. And
No,
the whole idea. of
I'm not
sex-
going there right now. I'm going with the husband's doing his due diligence, and the wife is just not feeling
Ooh,
attractive.
yeah,
So she's not putting out for sex because she doesn't find herself attractive, and so she's ultimately hurting her husband. But those kind of hypotheticals, there's hundreds of them, man, and they all equal one partner not having.
That's why I said
sexual
sex needs to be at the
satisfaction.
center of a marriage in a lot of ways. Like,
Well,
it
he's
needs to
right.
be.
That's what he said. The first commandment
if
was.
you're not
and it's
doing
weird because I
that,
never
dude, it's
thought
just
that,
like,
but he's right. The first commandment was go out and populate the world in so many words.
To top the dominance hierarchy, bro.
Yeah.
And if you lose that sexual attraction, that virility, and that, you know, it's like, what else do you have there, bro? It's not good.
I don't know what
Tell
the
you what,
roommates-
it's a desert,
Dude,
Sahara.
I don't know what the poor people in that situation where your wife or your husband is like, you know, their bodies are in a situation where, like, if they could, they would, but they can't because they have a
Talking about like coma,
yeah,
waist down paralysis,
exactly.
vagina dusted out and sewed up.
Well, most of the time it'd be like they have hands, they have other ways, you know, like that's where they're gonna get the pushback. It's like, oh, well, what can you do? You
Uh-huh.
know, maybe your vagina's sewed up or whatever, but you can do this,
Yeah,
right? Or you
right.
can do that. You can
You
still,
yeah.
you know, figure out a way around this in a way that you guys are still sharing intimacy and sort of some version of sex in the bedroom, you know. And that's where I think the Catholics would be like, well, if it's not, you know, vaginal intercourse, then you just can't have any of it.
Is that for real?
I think they're pretty strict on some of that, yeah.
No oral, nothing?
I don't know. I'm not a Catholic, so I can't comment, but I do know that they are pretty, they can be pretty strict on some of those things.
No kidding.
So, like, under those circumstances, say you're a Catholic guy and your wife, you know, she can't do anything. Like, what does he do? You know, does he masturbate? Can he? Or just, like, because I don't know.
Just
Like,
chop
that's
your balls off. And
Chop
just-
them off.
If you know that's your life, chop them off.
Let's go to the vasectomy doctor and
kill
be like,
myself.
I want the nutsectomy.
Wait, is that a
Cut
is
it
that
off.
is that like a sin to cut your nuts off?
don't
Body
think so.
mutilation. Yeah, self-mutilation, dude. Absolutely.
Yeah. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
it's-
Ooh, 100%.
What if you just
Well,
Where
you,
does it specifically say self-mutilation? Is
I
it-
don't know. I'll have to find it. It's kind of like the tattoo thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's basically like you have to think about your body being a temple, right?
Mhm.
So, like, we remove some bricks just because we don't
the
like
most
'em.
important bricks?
God's like, I put those bricks there. Put them back.
yeah,
It's kind of like the gender thing. You basically be giving yourself. I don't even want to think about it. But, like,
chemically castrate
yeah,
yourself. How about that?
oh God, still.
Still.
I would. I think. What would you do as
Feels
a guy
wrong.
if you knew you had to be celibate for the next like 30 years?
Oh my god, dude.
Would you do that? Would you just
Where
like,
was I living?
sign up for?
What
I don't know.
If I was
here?
like a cottage in the hills, definitely could pull it off, probably.
Yeah.
But if I was like in normal life,
Yeah.
I'd like make a chastity belt out of like freaking titanium, you know, and just wear that thing, and that would be my life. Yeah.
All right. We should probably try to wrap this video.
Yep. It's late. Do we have any comments?
Up. No.
Damn. Oh, there's a few. How you doing, fellers? Hey guys. Shutai.
some women dress in church pornography?
Can be.
I
Absolutely.
guess it's been. The question is how long you whacked it, because it depends.
No one can probably hear me.
You know, because
Okay, so the question was,
can someone dress in church and it be pornography? I guess it depends. If she's wearing like lingerie and you can see her nipples, probably. If she's just like, wearing a hot dress because she's going to church and she likes to dress up.
okay,
probably
there's.
not.
All right, I'm gonna say this right off.
If
the
you're
bat.
from
There
a
are
Baptist
certain
church in
women
Florida-
that they can wear anything, and they will be. You'll see. Okay, unless they're wearing like a trash bag. Okay, and then there's other women where you can see everything, and you're like, that's definitely porn, but it's not porn for me. It's turning me way off. Okay,
Been there, done that.
So
man.
that's the question.
Hard
That.
to
So in
tabernacle.
that case, that woman, take for instance, a very attractive woman who's wearing very immodest clothing. That's definitely porn.
John, you're talking
probably.
about scorching the retinas.
Yeah, that could happen. But I think what could happen also, on the other hand, is some very attractive woman that, she could be wearing something completely modest for a normal woman and still be seen as be more prone to sexual objectification.
Like some of them Baptist
And that's your
preachers'
bad. Bro.
wives.
You got to
bro.
allow that hot chick to be a hot chick and control you stupid self. Because she is.
It goes back to 14-year-olds finding National Geographic pictures and being like turned on. So it depends on who you are and what age you are.
Yeah.
And
And number one, if you do see a woman in church, and just don't look over there. It's like you're in church, bro. Like,
Yeah.
don't look over there.
It's
dude.
really on her. Like she knows.
it's not happening in church. Porn doesn't happen in church, guys. I don't know what church you're going to. It's not happening there, okay? You need to do something about your brain.
Dude, I don't know. There's some weird.
Something's
churches
wrong with
out
you
there.
if you're going that direction, my friend.
So maybe some of these hippie churches.
You know,
from the 70s.
Yeah, maybe.
Braless, nipples out. I could see
We got a
some
lot of
erections
armpit hair
sprouting.
too, so it'd be like just walk.
Just
outfit.
focus on the armpit
Was
hair.
there, Dave, was there any other comments?
Gross.
The same guy said women absolutely weaponize sex. Churchians don't understand this.
Agreed.
And then, yes, Catholics believe in only PIV acts within marriage.
Oh, so we got information
Okay.
on that. So, one of the comments was that churches do not understand the gravity of effect of women weaponizing sex against their partners. I definitely agree. The other one was affirming the fact that what's PIV acronym for?
Vaginal sex.
Okay, well there you
Penis
go.
intravenous
So a Catholic
vagina.
church there's one way in. There's only one way in for the cycle.
I got a feeling there's got to be some sort of like differences among their groups. I can't imagine like
Yeah.
every.
There's
I
all
don't know where they can point.
dude.
to
There's
that.
some that are like
Yeah, I don't
pro
either.
gay, dude. Some of their what are they provinces or what do they call them?
I don't know, districts.
They're basically
I'll
broken
shut
up
up
that
now.
way. Anyway,
Let's finish this video.
Oh,
Gotta
we do
go.
have to
Gotta
finish
go,
it.
man. It's 10:18. We're going into late night porn hours.
Good, we're keeping them off.
corn.
I would
No, but you're using you're bringing the emotional.
I would say you're doing. I think you're doing that when you use
Okay,
this story.
so-
I would not deny that this is a virtuous man in many respects, laudable, who I could learn a great deal
Right,
from.
but no, you use the word evil. That's
right.
Okay, you define evil in a way I don't.
The way things shouldn't be, I would
Yes,
say.
I
And I would
that's-
refer to natural evil. So if a man is born blind, this is a natural evil. If a stone is blind,
Yeah.
this is not a natural evil. But I would also refer to moral evil as this is the way things shouldn't be. So we disagree on that.
Okay, yes. So I'm trying to think of. Okay, is it? It shouldn't be that kids spend as much time as they do on social media. Do we both agree with that? That they spend too much time?
Yes,
Would you call it evil if they did spend too much time?
probably yes.
Okay,
And then
I wouldn't. I would
have
say
to
it was
think about
wrong,
it.
but I wouldn't say it was
Yeah.
evil.
Yeah. So I've shared with you how I define evil. How do you define
Is
it?
the deliberate infliction of hurt on another human being?
So I would say that pornography involves the deliberate infliction of hurt on another human being through the photographing of a person.
So that-
I'm not sure. I don't have I don't know
Men
where
are
to
as
draw that
capable
line.
of masturbating to lingerie models as they are to awful stuff.
Right. So what I think the goal should be is to line up the goal of the artist or the photographer and the goal and the intention of the viewer with the dignity of the human person. Because I can view something non-pornographic and say masturbate to it.
Right.
The problem isn't with the thing I'm looking at. The problem's with me. Likewise, likewise, I could look through a pornographic magazine and feel nothing but pity for these women who don't know their dignity. In that case, objectively, it's pornography, but subjectively, it isn't for me.
Right.
So I think you want both to line up with the dignity of the human person.
One is totally admirable. Calling the non-lining up, is a lingerie model losing her dignity? And you may say yes.
Yeah, I think I would say yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But again, I want to make a huge distinction between these gradations.
Well, and so do I.
Something can be far less bad
That's
than
why I
something
don't want
else.
to. When people say pornography, they're thinking of the most awful behaviors.
Well, let me ask you this then, because it sounded like you were saying that if a man views pornography and thereby doesn't commit adultery, it's okay.
No, I didn't say okay. I said it wasn't awful.
Not horrible. Fair enough.
Right.
Thank you for the correction.
Yeah.
But you've also said that you're very much opposed to violent pornography, obviously. A man says, I need to watch violent pornography so I don't commit adultery. Do you say, well, okay, that's less bad too? Or do you condemn that with a greater severity?
Well, because the odds are that the people in it are being hurt.
What if they're willing to be hurt? What if they enjoy being hurt?
So I more or less subscribe to your vision of the issue. But again, I want to remind everybody watching or listening that my vision was of Playboy of the 1960s when I was a teenager, which would be regarded today as
not even worthy of Netflix.
Yes,
I mean, what we
right.
once called hardcore, we now call softcore.
Yes, okay. So
once called softcore, we now call Netflix.
But I have to ask you and many others who feel as you do, and I respect it. Is everything? Well, once you say masturbation under all circumstances is evil, that I will admit we part company.
Yeah. And that's fine. I mean, we knew we would disagree.
Yes, that's fine.
And there's also a lot of things we agree about.
By the way,
there
was one, I don't want to say his name because I may be wrong, but I believe there was one major evangelical leader. I mean, major. He was a household name for a while.
Dobson, I think.
So you do know what I'm referring to.
I don't want to misspeak here.
Yeah.
Maybe Thursday you can look this up, but I believe Dobson at one point justified mass. What I respect about you and what I respect about Jordan Peterson is that very often you tell us to take the hard road. You're like, yes, it's bloody hard, but be a man. Like, rise up, choose the harder path, choose the more virtuous path. I just wish that you or Peterson would be more emphatic when it comes to sexual sins, that of course you're tempted to it. Of course you want to do it. What's interesting isn't why people masturbate to pornography. That's obvious. What's interesting is why people decide they don't want to.
Again,
why not encourage them?
Don't throw in the word pornography. You masturbate alone is a sin to you and evil.
That's correct.
What if he's masturbating to an image he makes up in his brain?
If he's masturbating to nothing, I would consider it an evil.
Okay, fair. Okay.
Yeah.
It's
Dobson?
Dr. James Dobson in about 1987. The quote appears to be, "It is my opinion that masturbation is not much of an issue with God. It's a normal part of adolescence. Indeed, Jesus did not mention it, ...
Jesus didn't mention a lot of things.
Well, yeah, but it's not insignificant, nor does the Hebrew Bible talk about it. The spilling of seed with Onan, from which we get onanism, the sin was not that he spilled the seed. The sin was that he didn't have intercourse with his brother's a widow.
So, the Catholic would say that reason would show us that masturbation is disordered, that pornography is disordered, because it takes a natural act, which is good, and it thwarts the end of it. That's why I use the example
What about a man who can't attract a woman? He should spend his life, obviously, then.
Yes, because masturbation is not like urination. It's not something you need to do or else you're going to become neurotic and die somehow. You're not going to find anybody in the morgue with a tag on their toe that says virgin or something.
All right.
And I think it's a pornified culture that's given us this idea.
The ideal life would involve none of this. I am not preoccupied with the ideal life. I am preoccupied with a good life. As I often say, I am not interested in making saints. I am interested in making good people. And it is so hard to make good people in a post-communist, post-Nazi world, post-Islamic, it's not post yet, Islamic terrorist world. I admit I am preoccupied with real evil rather than non-idyllic behavior.
Yeah.
I admit it. That's where
and
I
maybe
am.
to clarify,
The rest of it's kind of
Same thing. They're like, we agree on this, but we disagree on masturbation.
the one thing I was gonna point out, because he's like, just man up, whatever. And,
Be a man.
You don't need it to. But I was thinking about how this sin. This was actually a couple weeks ago. It's kind of like the one desire, and I could be wrong as far as saying it's one desire that we have, that has a correct context. There's no correct context for your desire to murder someone. There's no correct context for your desire to steal. These other sins that you have to deal with. But this has a correct context. Like, you have this raging desire as a man for sex, and it's completely out of bounds except when you have that commitment.
Well, you could say murder is the same thing as to kill. Like, you're taking a human life, but one is justified. Like, say you're defending your house, or
Yeah, I mean that's.
So it's like you're still, because okay, so sex.
But you don't have a
is
desire
orgasm.
for it.
David
No.
stole a temple bread.
Some guys do.
So,
But I mean,
some will
you have
say.
okay, no, I see what you mean. So you're talking about like basically instinct.
Yeah, because if you think about all the other sins you can commit, there's not really a
good
desire
form of
that
them.
it's you don't have this desire for it that then has a correct context where you can actually do it.
Well,
Right.
covet like a desire in general for.
But there's not a correct context in that coveting's fine.
Well, that's why I say desire, like coveting God or coveting good things.
Yeah.
You sort of desire them, but that's just desire. It's kind of like a general term.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily precise as sexual act, which
Yeah.
is that's what it is.
So it's
Yeah.
uniquely difficult, I think, to deal with.
Lying is one where I think that it's a weird one, but I think there's context, and then we see it in the Bible where you can lie and it's okay.
Yeah.
So lying is one.
Stealing, like I said, David stole the temple bread.
He didn't steal it. He asked the priest.
He didn't steal. He stole it.
Joe, he asked the priest.
There's no.
He
I don't
asked
think
the
he-
priest.
It's
think-
commonly referred
I
to.
think even in
No, he
Proverbs,
didn't
what's
steal
it
He asked
say?
the priest.
He
He did. He asked the priest.
doesn't Paul or in
What
Proverbs.
did he steal? Did somebody steal something back there?
Stole Bathsheba and killed
Yeah,
somebody.
that's
but
what he
that's not a
stole.
good thing.
No, he didn't. It
Murder
was not
and
a correct.
technically
no
was
correct
rape,
form
too,
of it.
just so you know.
But I mean, war.
Anyway, where are you getting at, Mike?
Well, I
killing,
was saying Solomon
murder.
said in Proverbs, or maybe it wasn't Solomon, but he's basically like, "Don't make me rich so that I forget about you. Don't make me poor so I dishonor your name by stealing."
I love that one.
And so, I think, I
It's
don't.
knowing your desires can go messed up. You want to
Yeah.
subject yourself to circumstances that would test them.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I think lying is definitely one. People want to lie all the time to cover their tracks for whatever reason. Like lying is one of those things that humans learn.
Do you get a
early
dopamine
on.
release from it though, like you do?
Yeah,
Usually
dude.
trying to just save your.
power.
They save their
It's
butts
control.
from something. You bet you get a dopamine from that,
I don't know if I'd get dopamine. I get
dude. It's relief.
maybe relief. I'd be more paranoid. I'd probably have more.
It's because you're a good guy. There's a lot of guys out there that are full of shiza, and they're constantly lying. And you know what? That's funny. We are actually dealing with this with sort of in the church, you might say, but people are prone to exaggeration, right? Joe and I were discussing this, kind of just thinking really deeply on the issue and how it evolves, because it kind of has to do with lying.
Oh God!
So like when you constantly elaborate, that turns into an exaggeration, and then all of a sudden you have a confabulation of a memory, and that becomes reality. You cause your conscience to now become a mechanism of fantasy instead of a mechanism of detecting reality. So a lie that you say for righteous reasons, like the vignette we bring up all the time with Dietrich Bonhoeffer, where he tells the suicide mission guys who are going to kill Hitler, like, it's okay, you're laying down your life for your brother. It's not that you're killing yourself because you hate the world. Okay, you're actually doing an act that's very selfless. And so they get out that we're going to hell. So they have to lie to get into the place. They have to lie, and they also looks like they're committing suicide. That conscience is actually being employed very well, and they're lying at the same time. So it's an interesting place.
It's an intent thing.
What is good?
Absolutely, it's an intent thing, but it takes a good conscience to be able to examine what the intent is. Yeah.
What is good?
What is good? What is the overarching good? Not like the binary good of like don't lie. You know,
That's
like,
kind of why I was talking about the
That's
sex
why-
in the beginning of like what's okay to do, what's not okay to do, and it's like everyone's sex life is going to be very different, and it should be. You know, it should be uniquely different. It should bond you and your wife together. It should be something that.
But I would argue in beautiful ways, right?
I'm
Not in
saying
perverted
bond,
ways.
okay? I'm not welded together and jacked up with freaking zip ties, dog. I mean,
Yeah.
like bonded in a way that's
Intimate.
that's special and unique to you and your wife. Your sex should be a fun place you guys can explore together and enjoy, and it's not going to be like everybody else's sex.
Shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be.
I mean, beyond
know?
like I mean, like,
And
that's
you
the
guys
whole-
might do things that
like,
other
that's a-
people might not do, and you know the idea of sex is to have kids, but God made it pleasurable for a reason.
Yeah,
You know,
I agree.
and women and men have different desires when it comes to sex. They want different things, but ultimately, there's a give and take in every sex
100%.
you're gonna have,
And you're
the
gonna
best
like, and
sex
to give
that
is
you're
to
gonna
receive,
have.
dude. I mean,
Is
like,
you're gonna be able to please your wife, know how to make her come, and she's gonna know how to make you come, and that's really gonna be awesome.
You
And
should
you're not
be,
only
yeah.
gonna be doing it to have kids, because at the end
Well,
of
that's
the
the
day,
Catholic way.
I know.
because at the end of the day,
Well,
if you're
is it
gonna
just to have
stay
kids?
in
I-
a marriage
I-
that's healthy, I believe personally that you should find your wife attractive and be having sex with her regularly.
Yeah, I mean,
100%,
just be
dude.
roommates. Like,
Otherwise, you're roommates.
But
And the
I-
idea is like, why do we have this drive so instinctually like driven? And like, it's not just like, okay, crank out a couple kids. You know, it's like it's there all the time.
yeah.
It's not like it just turns off every
Yeah,
once in
the
a while.
switch thing that freaked me out.
You
like,
know,
turning
so
it
I
on,
think-
turn it off.
I think that is freaky, but I
Well-
think that that's something important to put out because these guys are kind of splitting hairs about what is okay, what's not okay. You know, like you were saying, getting hurt and like these types of things, which are like obviously wrong to do. Like screw your head on right. You've been watching porn for 20 years and you're in some dark, disgusting cesspool, and you expect your wife to feed into those messed
Or
up,
she's been
screwed
reading
up fantasies.
50 Shades
Yeah,
of Grey and
thinks
wants you
you're-
to be that guy.
Same thing.
Yeah,
applies.
you know, it's like
Same thing.
good point, Mike.
It's
You know,
not
if
just for
she's
the
gonna
male. I
do
mean,
that,
guys, generally, when we speak about this, we may use the male as an example or the female, but most of the time, it goes both ways.
if she's gonna do the 50
can
Shades
go
of
both
Grey.
ways.
That's not okay. If she's gonna withhold sex for 12 years, whatever, that's not okay. You know, I think that there's a line to be held here at some level, and there's a common knowledge of like what's okay and what's not, and every culture is gonna have a little different idea of what that is and what acts are okay.
I just think that the direction should be beautiful, and that's, you know, I guess culturally, like if you take a Catholic, some of the sexual acts, they're going to say, okay, that's not acceptable. But, you know, that's where the fine splitting hairs things begin.
The Holy Spirit will convict you on it if it's out of bounds.
I sure hope so.
Trust
I
it
mean,
on that.
again, your life has to be sort of applied to Christ
Mhm.
if you even want an answer.
Yeah.
If you don't want an answer, then you're probably just shirking your duties as a believer anyway, and so you're not going to get one that way.
Mhm.
But I think
That's
he
true.
brings up a good point that I thought was very salient about like subjective porn versus objective porn. And like you can look at a porn magazine, say like you're forced to look at one somehow in some horrible,
that happens.
messed up world. Yeah, watching Netflix, go to New York, look at this, you know, like you're gonna see it everywhere,
Let's
dude.
go to the beach.
Go to the beach. I mean, sometimes, right? You don't have to react to it that
That's
way.
not
And I
porn,
think-
guys. No.
well, there's
Going to the beach
definitely
is not porn.
presentations of it that are,
Have you
dude.
seen how some of them
again,
dress
this
at the
is-
beach lately?
It's the beach, bro.
Have you
Okay.
seen?
What are we supposed to wear at the beach?
I'm saying.
Cover up your D and your nips, and that's what you do. The rest is fair
How's that any
game.
different than a Playboy?
The point is,
the
Joe,
60s.
that it's everywhere these days, and it's become
Yeah, they were wearing some
decentralized.
weird ass shit back in the 60s. I don't know why they were going to the beach in the first, but wearing like wool sweatshirt to the beach. I don't know what's happening there. It's just,
Yeah. It's brutal.
One question I was thinking we should provide, like maybe some advice or counsel to like women who maybe have discovered their dudes looking at porn or how they should react to it, because I think some of them view it as cheating completely,
Oh yeah,
and like
good point.
because I think I think the reality is today, every woman, like the man every woman is going to deal with is likely either had a porn problem or will show up sometimes during the relationship.
What
Yeah.
do you do?
So there's like a
uh,
couple things. Like first of all, depending if you've been married. Number one, number two, porn is so easily accessible nowadays, and it's everywhere. So like men are getting easily tempted if their wife and they don't have a good sexual relationship, like whether their sex is terrible or she's withholding
that's
sex.
it. I think
Hold on.
the point
If
is
she's withholding sex or something of that nature, where the sex isn't happening, right? That's scenario number
well,
one.
let's simplify it though. Let's simplify it because I hear what you're saying, and I think that it's easier said. You need to examine your sex life with your husband first, and see what's going on there. Are you guys having frequent sex? Are you withholding? Is there?
That's what I'm saying.
Right,
I'm
but
saying
you're
there's
bringing up a
different. There's
specific issue.
scenarios. Usually, it's where the guy isn't getting fulfilled, and he wants to, and he's just got blue balls all the time. You know what I mean? And he just wants to get his nut off, so he's going to porn. But I guess there are other situations where they're having great sex, and he just wants more and more and more and more, and it's like this depraved, like out of control.
Well, I think the important part
nymphomaniac type
is
of
that
thing.
it's
Sex
the
ed.
circumstances that you find it. If your husband is using porn, the circumstances are critical to seeing how to deal with it. Either way, you're going to have to understand he needs to undertake the job, and you along with him, of finding out what kind of trauma he's underwent. If it was something that happened when he was young, if he found it or was subjected to it as a child, what was he dealing with, but not asking for specifics on the womanly side. You don't need to know certain details because all that's going to do is destroy you. There's information that you need in order to work the situation out, and then there's information that's just going to hurt you. There's no information, and that information is usually what is he doing, how, some of the specific details of the pornography you don't need to know about. You need to, those things aren't going to help your marriage. It's not going to help you. Keeping it more on a general basis for that is going to help you because that information is never going to leave your mind. It's going to torture you for the rest of your life. So basically, you have to keep the focus on healing him and healing the marriage and deciding on if he, wants to deal with it or not. How did you find out about the porn addiction? Was it something that he came to you and told you that he wants to work on, or did you find it and now you have to confront him? Like, these circumstantial details are essential to being able to handle it. And like you said, are you playing a role in this? Like, if you're a wife, are you being self-examining yourself? Am I playing a role in depriving him, or some kind of issue that I have control of that I need to also be held accountable for? And then also, like, the husband, if he's looking at porn, obviously his spiritual walk has issues, and that means your marriage is going to have issues because he's the spiritual leader of your household. So it's not something you can put off. All right. So if you found it, then you need to talk to him about it before you talk to your pastor about it, before you talk to your friends about it, before you go out and start asking for people for advice. I mean, do your Google searches, do all that stuff on your own, but don't make that situation between your husband and your wife anybody's business but yours until you talk to him about it. Period. Do not go talking to your pastor or your friends about it. That's not okay. It's not the way it happens.
What's kind of blowing my mind recently is how many women I've talked to, they don't care if the dude looks at porn.
Yeah,
Absolutely don't care. They're like, sometimes they view it as like, I don't want to deal with him tonight, just go jerk off.
Yeah, that's disconnection in the
Whoa.
relationship. I mean,
Easy
either
way
way,
out.
the question when
Tugga.
is porn inside the relationship, if it's tolerated or not, it's a sign of dysfunction and trauma.
Yeah,
It
I
needs to
would
be
think
dealt
so.
with.
It blows my mind.
And
And
so-
I pressed them on it because what they have
Are they
promised-
believers? It can't be, man. There's no way.
No, but like what would bother them is if the girl was like they were looking at was like
Hot.
local,
Oh,
like somebody like on
Local
Instagram or like
Oh.
someone they could actually maybe get in contact with. If it's some nebulous chick from the internet that they could never like, they don't care then.
Like there's no possibility.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Which,
I was,
that's
Well, it's not going to lead to
'cause
like
I was bugging her
it's
about
not
that.
gonna
I was
lead
like,
to
I
him
guarantee,
cheating.
I guarantee you would care if he was using some Instagram chick that you knew as his porn, and she agreed. And so it has to do the context, man.
And it's
running the
intimacy,
highlights
dude.
reel.
It's messed up. Like, I don't think men are being honest with themselves by saying it's just a sexual act, like it's just getting your rocks off, stuff like that. There's intimacy, and you're either dulling yourself to the potential intimacy you'll have with your wife, or you're degrading it. Like, period. That's what's going on. You can't eliminate intimacy from the sexual act. And that's where I agree with the Catholics. Because by masturbating, you turn it into like a solo thing, and it's just a perverted thing, and that becomes normal for you. There's a whole movie.
I mean, I don't care who you are,
there's
dude.
There's
Like,
a
he
really
wrote a whole
kind of
book on it.
Hang on. There's a fascinating movie that you guys can watch. God, what's the name? I'll have to find the name out, but it's about this young guy who's addicted to porn, and he's a handsome guy, drives a nice car, has a good job.
Oh yeah, it's
He starts going to school, and he meets up with this older lady, and he didn't know he had a problem.
No, first he dates like Scarlett Johansson. She's like all like he's like
Yeah,
he's
he
like
tries
wondering
dating,
why
but
like
he
he'll go
can't.
bang chicks,
They go
and then
whack
he'll
off.
like go whack off. Right? Yeah,
Don
that's what
John.
it is. That's
Yep,
what it is.
Don John.
He'll go whack
And
off
so-
afterwards.
Yeah, but then he finds an older lady who starts to explain to him that his lack of intimacy, understanding how it's between two people, like this was beyond him. He had no understanding of this. And so like the younger guys, this is what I'm trying to warn them about, is that if you think you can use the excuse that you're just a man and you need to get your rocks off, understand at the same time that you're destroying that idea of connectivity with the other sex, and it's not something that's easy to get over. That's why the whole movie was about this guy trying to get over it, wanting to get over it, knowing he had a problem but could not.
They don't
Like, he
call
would-
it an addiction for no reason.
But
Like,
it's not only
it
that it's an
definitely can
addiction,
become an
but it
addiction,
also
bro.
like completely wrecks your sense of intimacy
yeah.
with another person.
Well, it's just like an addiction. Like if you take heroin, dude, you know, normal life and like eating a nice piece of chocolate cake on Sunday isn't going to come close. The normal pleasures of life do not come close to that heroin bang.
Well, the
You know what I
problem
mean?
with it is like with the heroin bang, most people are like, yeah, it's a needle and you're destroyed and you're a shell of a man. You're basically, you're screwed. You're screwing yourself. With masturbation, it's normalized. So I'm trying to let them know that yes, there's serious repercussions that come along with
Absolutely.
it, that you're not going to be obvious like a heroin addict. Like it's obvious. You go on heroin, you're an idiot. You're going to destroy your life and you're
Or
going
you
to
could
become an
write
addict.
some great music. It depends.
And then
on how
destroy your
you know.
life and
Anyway,
die, right?
You,
So
one
it's like,
thing,
it
piece
always
of
ends the same
advice
way.
that our dad gave us when he found our massive porns. It wasn't massive. It was like a couple pages. But anyways, he put all that stuff out. I think our mom found it, put on the bed. And I was like, I'm taking a shower, Johnny, dealing with this.
Joe
And
bailed on
John,
me, dude. But I'll tell you what
I
he
did have to
told
take
me.
a shower. But
What
anyway,
he told
but
me was simple.
I was going to finish this, dude.
Well, you weren't there.
He told this to me, too.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
That's why I remember it.
All right.
Yeah. And I like this, what he said, because I wasn't expecting this. I was expecting him to be all like, you're a terrible person. Boys, you shouldn't be doing this. How I just embarrassed, you know what I mean? No, but he understood. He was like, he knew what was going on. And he came at us with love. And he's just like, you know what, boys? I just really want you to understand that this is not the way women are. This is not the way a woman is. I didn't understand that for a long time. Like, just didn't make any sense. I was like, but these are women. They're naked. There's boobs. There's vaginas. These are obviously women. Like, this is how women are. Like, this is what a woman is. And then later on in life, I understood exactly what he meant by that. And he's like, this is not the way a woman is. This is not the way a woman, this is not the way you're going to interact with a
But
woman.
the
you know?
issue is that the presentation is so engaging just with a picture, just with a movie, that you begin to think that is what a woman is. And that's where, like, I wish Dad would have elaborated and said, like, your perspective, your understanding, the depth of what a woman is and intimacy can be has nothing to do with this. And that's where we were kind of lost for a while on it. But, yeah, a woman is a woman. But
You're
what's
not going to
woman-
have a real, like, even in Don Juan, when he's having sex with a real woman that's hot, you know, it's not enough, you know, to his dopamine glands where he's like literally running through, like, I don't know how many windows you would have open. And like in the movie, it shows like just how like he like nerded out he was on the porn thing. Like he knew exactly what he knew what he was doing. Like he was hitting it on like such a high level that like that real woman
He had like
was not
15
doing
heroin
anything.
syringes
Like,
in
he
his
was,
body.
Yeah, he was like all
at
on
once.
level.
But
4
the point
grams
is
of
that that's the
morphine.
point that I want as the Iron Disciples to distribute to the younger men and women out there, is that it is not an innocuous act. It is not something that you're not going to have to pay the piper for. You will be impacting your perceptions. Very, like, some of the most precious stuff you have is the connections with people. You know, that is the everlasting family of Christ, the body of Christ, this interconnectivity and ability to be understood. What I see in this interview so apparent is the Tower of Babel. right? One guy saying another thing, another guy saying the same word, still not understanding each other. A lot of people think the Tower of Babel is like all the languages being different languages. No, it's the languages getting confused, meaning our perception of the actual word being shared is slightly different. Before, it used to probably be exactly the same, which means the precision of communication was on a different level. There are no little mishaps. We were speaking directly and concisely all the time. And so that kind of degradation, it's the way you describe truth. It comes down to the way that you describe yourself to yourself. So it is not something to be taken lightly. I don't think you're going to go to hell for masturbating. I don't think you're going to go to hell for these things, especially if you have a repentant heart. But honestly, like, you have to understand this because the world is not telling you this.
And
They're
that's
trying
why
to
talking about
normalize it.
sex and some of the intimate stuff, it just ruins the moment. It's like you don't need words sometimes to build a moment of sexuality and like to make love with your wife. Like, if you're gonna be like talking all this stuff, it's gonna kill the moment. Like, you are just gonna murder any type of like intimacy and hotness possible. You know, like, and I was reading this book that I'm reading. It's called The Master and His Emissary by Ian McGilchrist. And he brought up something that was really interesting about language, because you're bringing up Tower of Babel and language and like what it is. And he speaks about like how language was like created, and he believes like it was song, it was music, it was like inflection, it was a tone of voice, it was a scream, or it was like a coo, or it was like a grunt, you know, or it was
Laughter, pain,
laughter. It was
all kinds
these
of
types
stuff.
of musical, you know, and then we developed certain ways to put syllables together and create words to define objects. Like, this is a glass, right? And it's the same way that Jordan Peterson he'll talk about like, oh, this is a box, right? But no, it's more than a box. It's black, you know, and there's little imperfections here, and it opens, and it's about this big, and you can see a shadow over here, and it's made out of wood. It's also wood, but there's metal on it as well, right? And he goes into detail about what it actually is. And how words are actually confining, you know, and you can see that in their conversation. Like, they're actually agreeing on a lot of this stuff.
Definitions.
But when you give a word and you define something, you allow everyone to talk about it and communicate with it, right? Because everyone can relate to that word, and we can all agree on what it is, right? But at the same time, you're also destroying the ability for any type of like new perspective on it. You know what I mean? The growth of something. That's why we have to make new words all the time. That's why we put them all together to describe things, right? So I think it's really interesting that like these guys come from different religions, and they're both basically saying the same thing. You know, they both want good marriages, you know. And I think that's the real point to kind of, you know, extract from that. You know? It's like, where's your heart? Because they have this thing about thoughts. And they talk about like, oh, it's just your actions that matter, you know. And you can kind of see Prager like putting the emphasis on the action, and then Matt's like, well, no, thoughts are important too, right? Because thoughts become actions, right? And sometimes we instinctually do things without thinking, so we kind of think that like, oh, you actually do things without thinking, which is very odd because they actually have brain scans of people picking things up, and what's very weird is like, the actual like movement happens before sometimes like you're actually thinking it. So it's almost like you're premeditating what you're already doing. It's bizarre shit. And so you have to think about that from like, your thoughts are important, absolutely, like Matt's saying. If you keep a clean room in your brain, then your actions are going to be clean too. But at the same time, we also know that we have to have discipline and willpower, and have to apply ourselves and be like, okay, like it does. If you can think and control your thoughts, but if you're not actually doing anything, then it doesn't actually matter, right? So both are very important. And I think it's like one grievance isn't over another.
Well,
you know?
Dennis brings up the point that like if he forgot how he said it in Hebrew, but it's like a maxim. If you have a desire to do something sinful and you don't do it, you're better than the person who doesn't have the desire to do it and doesn't do it, because that person doesn't have the conflict and the inner struggle to say no. But and that's what we really define ourselves as a man, is the guy who does the right thing despite taking the easy way out. But keep this in mind, guys. There's no easy. You're going to have hard sitting at mom's couch, doing nothing, eating Hot Pockets all day. That's hard.
That sounds like hell.
Trust me, it's hard. It's hell.
Yeah, it's work.
And just as much as being productive. So your thoughts are the mechanism of your conscience. And your conscience, if you're a believer, is being informed by the Holy Spirit. So you're lucky to rely on that, and you should. So if there's something in question where you're not sure if it's a gray area, and there's tons of gray area in this situation right here, you need to rely on the Holy Spirit, pray, fast, take it seriously. If you really have a serious question that you're not getting answers for because you've went through the scriptures, you talked to pastors, and no one's giving you an answer, you have a relationship with God. Pray about it, fast about it, take it seriously.
Oh yeah.
Otherwise you're going to look God in the eye and he's going to be like, well, what did you really do
What'd
about
you
it?
do
You
about
just
it?
asked me a question and do nothing. I gave you a bunch of tools, and you say, what's my will? What's my will, God? And then you look in the Bible and it says, here's how to find out my will, and you didn't do any of that? Like, come on. You got no one to blame
The
but
greatest
yourself.
minds in the world ask questions and seek answers. And if you don't seek those answers, then you let those questions fall by the wayside and don't pay attention to them.
Well, there's something I want to say. One more thing
It's a sin.
that Dennis kind of brings up is like a little bit of. He takes evil very seriously, and he says wrong. Like there's something that's wrong that you do, but it's not evil.
It's an action.
Right. Or thought. For him, it's
Well,
like.
he doesn't think thoughts are on that level, obviously. Like, you can think about, like,
Well, anyway.
thinking about murdering somebody's bad, obviously. He's not saying that's good, but he's like, there's so much evil in the world, like, we can't bring
So
thoughts
he's
into this
saying
right
real
now.
evil. And so I think that's I think that what that encourages in your brain is an excuse mechanism. So you need to be honest with yourself, because something that's wrong is indeed evil. And that's why the Protestants are like, oh, there's no one sin above another, because they understand God's perfect. Like if you have any amount of sin, you're dead. Any amount of sin. But we do know that there's sins that are more grave because they impact other people. They can destroy to greater degrees the person. But we have to treat sin as sin. And so that's where I look at Dennis and I'm like, yeah, I have grace for people. You have grace for yourself. You have a repentant heart. But you're not going to look at something that's wrong and just say, oh, it's not evil. Like, don't do that, please. Yeah. Like, after listening to this, because, Dennis is very smart. There's a lot of smart guys who probably operate with that mindset.
Political.
Like, I have nicotine in my life. It's not like it's obviously, like, a horrible thing, but it's not something that I love to do anymore. And you'll notice, like, I watched this interview with a priest. He was dealing with a man that was cheating on his wife, going to prostitute, like the worst of the worst. And the priest sat him down because he came to the priest, right? And he looks at the priest and he's like, here's what I'm doing. I'm doing all this horrible stuff. What do I do? And the priest asked him a simple question. He said, do you want to do it? Because if it's what you want to do, then do it. And the guy's kind of frustrated and he's like, bangs his fist on there. He's like, aren't you supposed to help me? And he's like, do you want to do it or not? And he's like, no. He's like, then you need to stop doing it because you know it's wrong. And that's the watershed moment for people. Is it's like, if it's an instinct or some biological thing that you're making excuses for because you have to do it, but you feel horrible for doing it, you know it's wrong to some degree, it may not be a grave evil like murdering a child, it's still going to corrupt your life. So
I was going to say that, dude, even when I was a kid, like, I looked at porn, like, I always felt like trash afterwards. I was just like, something about this is just gross.
Same way you feel when you eat a bunch of, like, pizza way
Junk
past you feel like a spiritual nausea.
I forgot who told me this, but they were like, thoughts are like birds. They can land on your head, but you choose whether they make a nest there or not. It's a good analogy, because you could have some messed up. Every day I think about some weird ass shit, and I'm like, you know what? That was some weird
Throw that
ass
in the
shit.
garbage.
See you later.
Dave, do we have any comments that we need to?
Throw that in the garbage.
Couple more. Well, shout out from Glenn.
Glenn, I don't think you're still in the chat, but
Love you, Glenn.
we'll chat with you this week probably, or next week.
Love Glenn. Glenn's awesome.
The Bill Clinton guy from Discord.
Bill Clinton.
So this is going back to earlier discussion. He said, I think if you were truly able to masturbate without bringing to mind lustful thoughts / pictures, I think that's probably not sinful. I just don't see how that's possible.
So Dave just read us Bill kind of agreed with us on the masturbation. Like, if you could do it without looking at pictures, it's probably fine. But can you do that?
Can't
Yeah.
do it. Like, can you actually initiate the process and do it?
Probably
I don't
not.
think
Maybe
so.
when you're like,
I think it can happen to a man, but I don't think like
4-year-olds might be happening.
maybe
I
like
don't know.
if the 12-year-old's doing it to like some rocks he thinks look like breasts, is that okay?
God, rocks.
They're the right shape. He's just like, I'm fine with that.
I'd be like, yo, dude.
Creativity.
I'd be like, you're probably like some like bush kid in like Africa, because like if you're in the United States, like you just go to Walmart and you'd be like, all right,
It's
got
a
some
whole
better
bra
rocks in
section,
here.
bro.
That's what I was saying, dude.
Mm-hmm.
There's one more from the guy that had sent some messages earlier. All he said was, more Christians need to watch this podcast and read Dalrock.
Dalrock for sure, bro.
Yeah.
What was his name?
Smart dude.
Shutai.
Shutai.
Said, more Christians need to watch this podcast and read Dalrock.
Right on.
Thanks
Shutai.
for the shout out, bro.
Yeah, man. He's a smart guy. Rolo turned us on to him. We read some of his stuff. Loved it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that's all we got for this. And this topic could be endless. So
It is
I'm sure
endless.
We'll
Yeah.
revisit it
For
but,
life.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Yep.
Right on. Love you guys.